got to be kidding me.
The CEBL playoffs on TSN and TSN Plus.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the Dog on TSN 1050.
Off and running here on OverDrive, coming off a busy weekend. It's Mike DiStefano filling in for Brian Hayes. Got Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star in with me here till 7 o'clock. And boy, what a weekend we had, Dave. I was down at the Jays game Friday.
Nice.
Which might have been one of the best games to attend this season. I got to witness something that I didn't think I would ever see in my life. Alejandro Kirk stole a base.
Yes.
And it's Monday, but we're still buzzing about that base steal on Friday.
We are.
Like,
what a visual.
It's one of those, I don't know if I'm being hyperbolic here, Dave, but it's one of those, I remember where I was when type of moments.
It was
for myself.
Well, when I watched that, AB, I'll tell you what I thought of. It was shades of you and the O-Dog running the 40. Wasn't it?
It's funny because I was having a conversation with producer Owen, who was doing the gameplay beforehand, and I was like, I wish I thought of it, but imagine if we were able to get like a side-by-side of me running my 40 and then Alejandro Kirk stealing the base, which seemed very effortless for him. Like, it didn't even get no throw. I mean, the guy doesn't attempt to steal bases. I don't think you're expecting Alejandro Kirk to take off from first base, but he did. He caught him slipping, and so being in the stadium was funny though, because people saw him steal the base and it was hilarious. You kind of laugh. It's like, oh, Alejandro Kirk did it, and then it showed up on the jumbotron that it was his first career stolen base, and the place erupted. It was hilarious. Well, people bowing down like, holy smokes, we witnessed history in the making. It was awesome.
That was the beauty of it. It was like you watched it and you were like, did I just see what I thought I saw?
Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
Didn't even need to slide.
No.
Didn't even need to slide.
Stand up.
Yes, nice gesture there by Vladdy.
Yeah, Vladdy giving the base to Alejandro Kirk after the game there.
Like shades of Ricky Henderson breaking the all-time record, giving him the base. I love it.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was like you saw it happen and you were like, okay, that's unusual. And then you didn't realize, at least I did. I did not realize that he'd never done that before.
I know.
In his entire baseball career.
Yeah, it was a great ball game though, and like he was the center of it, right? Like he gets the stolen base, he had the home run to kind of get the offense started earlier in the game, and then with the bases loaded, rips a single into the outfield, brings in the tying and game-winning runs, and it was the Al Kirk show. It was the Kirky show that night, and it was a great win. Transitioned it. They 14-2, an absolute drubbing on Saturday. Where are you at with the pitchers, position players pitching in games like that? Are you for or against? There seems to be a very split community on this.
I mean, I'm for it. I mean, how are you going to stop it? Is first of all, like what rule would you put in to stop it?
Well, I think you would just have to a designated pitcher must pitch. Like that's the rule that you would have. I mean, I don't think it's that difficult to outlaw if Major League Baseball really wanted to.
You could, except that, there'd be complaints about that. You're already complaining about the fact that pitchers are, losing arms at unprecedented rates. You got injury. Yeah. You essentially got an injury epidemic in the pitching community, and now you're going to say, no, you have to pitch no matter what.
It's just kind of
difficult to imagine how you're going to outlaw that without a major uproar, and then people pointing to the idea that, hey, you're putting more workload on these. This is work they don't need. And so the idea, and it's a long tradition of, catchers coming in and outfielders coming in and throwing up fat pitches in a blowout game.
Do you find it entertaining? I guess is ultimately, like, sports supposed to be entertaining. I find it a little cringe and embarrassing. Like, I think that's where I'm coming from. And Rowdy Tellez, former Blue Jays, was kind of funny. I wonder if there was like that whole aspect of why he was in there to pitch in that blowout loss. But he goes out there, pitches 2 innings, gives up a couple home runs, hits a batter. Like, it's a little embarrassing. It's like, this is Major League Baseball. Like, how is it that we get to a point where Rowdy Tellez is out there pitching against major league talents.
Hey, well, first of all, it's not exactly the Zamboni driver coming in to play goal. Okay?
Well, it's not, but it is. Like, pitching is very hard. Yeah, but pitching is very hard. It's not as, like, first base and pitching is not the same at all.
I know what you're saying. Look, let's face it, anybody that makes the major leagues has generally been a pitcher at some point in their baseball career, usually in youth baseball, if they're not, or maybe high school baseball or perhaps college baseball. So these guys know how to throw a baseball pretty damn well.
It's similar to the Zamboni driver. They know how to get into a butterfly and flash a leather.
No, it's not similar to the Zamboni driver because the Zamboni driver is not a professional athlete.
Yeah.
These guys are professional athletes also. Look, I understand, but how do you really, you say it's cringy, you say it's embarrassing. I agree, it is. But how do you sort of make a blowout not embarrassing and not cringy, right? Like, does it really make it better if there's only professional pitchers pitching? I mean, I'm not sure. I think there's a certain curiosity to the idea that a position player can come in and actually hold his own, which often does happen.
Sometimes you do see it. Like Heineman went in the for the Blue Jays in the 9th inning to close out the ball game. Gave up 1 run, but it's like, all right, he got it. He got through it. He got it over and done with. But
exactly.
I'm not sure Major League Baseball cares enough to switch that out. And I get it. A game that doesn't matter. Do you really want to hurt the arms and put more stress on arms? Like, I understand that argument, but it's just it drags it on. It's like you got Rowdy out there for 30 minutes tossing meatballs, getting cranked into the second deck. It's like, I'm done with this game.
That is the problem. I agree with you. Like, but there's no way. Like, I'm not sure there's a way around that.
Yeah.
I'm really not. It could because sometimes you're just getting blown out, and sometimes guess what? The pain hangs around longer than you'd like it to.
Yeah.
And so I get where you're coming from, but I think it's just I just think status quo is probably going to prevail there. I don't see a movement to change it.
Yeah, probably not. But I don't know. Steve Phillips going to join us at 5:05. We'll see what Steve thinks potentially. Paul Skenes in action tonight, taking on the Blue Jays. I saw a ridiculous stat about Paul Skenes. He has not allowed a single run at PNC Park since June 3rd, not July 3rd, since June 3rd, Dave. Like, that's 2.5 months that this guy has pitched in his home ballpark and hasn't surrendered an earned run. So the Jays will have their hands full tonight, but they've done well against good pitching.
Yeah,
like they've done fairly well against good pitching. Even that game Friday night, like it was Jacob deGrom, and it's not that they have to get the runs off of the starter, but if they could put together quality at bats, like they got deGrom out of the game in the 5th inning that night, and then they got to the bullpen. If they could somehow get Skenes, get him out of the game after 5-6 innings, then work on the bullpen, which they traded half their bullpen away at the deadline. They got a bunch of AAA relievers out there. That's where I think you can really start to see the Blue Jays do some damage tonight.
Well, look, I mean, Paul Skenes is a phenom. There's no doubt about it. But he's showing some signs, maybe not at home, but he's showing some signs of a little bit of fatigue. Maybe he's a little worn out because 2 of his most recent 3 starts, obviously these 2 coming away, because as you pointed out, he hasn't given up much. 2 of his most recent 3 starts, he's given up 4 runs in each of them. So, and he hasn't, he made it to 4 innings in one of them and 5 innings in another.
He's thrown 3 shutouts in the other 3 games.
No, I know. I'm saying he has shown at least some signs of being human.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that this guy has, an incredible ERA of 2.13 and a win-loss record of 7-9 tells you everything you need to know about how bad the Pirates really are.
Well, I wonder how much like a guy like that could lose motivation down the stretch. Right? Like you talk about, maybe it's fatigue potentially, but also like mental fatigue of going out there, being the best pitcher in baseball, but having it ultimately go nowhere because the team continues to lose games that you're out there pitching your ass off. But, he's the front runner for the Cy Young somehow, a sub 500 record, yet he is the betting favorite on FanDuel right now to win the Cy Young. I think it's like minus 425. I was looking at it earlier today. It's like strong, heavy favorite, and he's a 7-9 pitcher.
Well, basically every metric you can look at tells you he's the most dominant pitcher in the game. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's a lot of debate about that. Or if he's not the most dominant, he is among a handful of the most dominant, and this year he's been the most dominant. So, yeah, it is like you have to wonder like what goes through your mind when you're that good a competitor. Like this guy is a ruthless gamer, right?
Yeah.
Like you go back to his college career and you hear the stories about his intensity and his ability to bring it when it matters. When no matter what you do, it doesn't matter. in terms of winning games for the Pittsburgh Pirates because they're just not going to win games. No matter how good you are. They're not going to win enough of them for you to matter as a competitive player. And you start going down the road of, is this the next Mike Trout? Is this the next sad story in baseball? I suspect it's not going to be because you believe that the Pirates will cash out on Paul Skenes at some point, right? But it can't come soon enough.
No, it can't. It really can't. And he's a player that you need to have in one of those big markets. And whether it's the Yankees, the Red Sox, a lot of people in Toronto don't want to have to face him, 8 times a year or face probably like 2 or 3 times a year, I guess, as a starter. But it would be great for baseball as a sport to see him in one of these big-time markets, right? Maybe send him to the Dodgers, where the Toronto would only have to play him once a week. The Dodgers get everyone anyways. You might as well load up on star talent. Speaking of, though, there was, I think we have the clip here of Bob Manfred, and he was talking about realignment possibly and some expansion talks creeping into Major League Baseball, which could kind of shift things around. Why don't we hear that now from old Bobby Mans? All right.
Okay.
We'll try and get that in a little bit. But it is interesting. It sounds like MLB, Major League Baseball, considering some expansion, try to grab a couple other teams to bring it in. Every other team or every league is doing it. It's the biggest way to add revenue to your sport. And, there are figures being thrown out that an expansion team could cost upwards of $2 billion to bring in a franchise. But if you do that, then there's the conversation of, okay, well, now if you bring in 2 franchises, you're at 32 teams, this is your chance to maybe do some realignment. And that's where things get real interesting in baseball, because if you decide to realign, do you do it in terms of proximity, of location where you are, or do you keep the lore of the American League and the National League alive? It is a fascinating question that if they decide to go down that route, what they would like to do. Like, do you have a preference on what they should do if you were asked?
Well, look, I mean, when you start hearing the comments from Bob Manfred talking about, I guess it's Rob, right? We should probably call him Rob. You're calling him Bobby. Is it Bobby for you? He's Bobby to you.
He's Bobby Mans on this show
Bobby
all
Mans.
the time.
Okay.
I think that's what's
like that.
Hazy B and the O-Dog. Little Bobby Mans.
Bobby
action.
Mans. Yes, okay.
But Robert Manfred would be his given name, I believe.
Robbie Freds? I don't know. Like, which one is it? No, I'm with you. But, I mean, he's talking about geographical realignment, and there was a mention of saving on travel, right? Of course, there's always cost savings involved in these things, right? So, look, I think if the American League and National League have been serving you well all these years, like, I don't know why you got to go to Eastern Conference, Western Conference, and be like the NHL and the NBA.
Well, I mean, the one thing I would push back on is the National League and American League used to have one big difference, right? And the National League pitchers used to hit.
Yeah.
When they got rid of that, it almost takes away the love or the difference of what the National League and American League are, and it's almost like it is the same. So why not have proximity kind of come into play?
That's where they've been heading, right?
Right.
I mean, that's where they've been headed. I mean, I guess, the NFL hasn't done that. They've got the AFC and the NFC, and those are historical. Those are historical lines that have been drawn that speak to where the league came from and where it originated from and how football evolved over time, right? Although those things get played with as you move forward, but yeah, I mean, so if I'm betting on the way it's going, to your point, yeah, it's been heading this way for a long time, ever since they took out the major delineation in the rule book that separated the National League from the American League. It seems like it's heading toward East and West, and it seems like to me like it could really benefit the Blue Jays.
Well, you get them out of the American League East.
Yeah.
You don't have to play the Yankees and the Red Sox, or the Rays, who always give them fits, 18 times a year or whatever, 13 times a year that they play them.
Like if you're talking about, I mean, not that we know how it's going to go. Like, does it make sense that the Atlantic Division in the NHL includes the Leafs and then these Florida teams? Like, why are the Leafs in a division with 2 Florida teams? I don't know.
Right. Like the Rangers are much closer than
Detroit's down the
Florida.
road. They don't play. They're not in the same division, so that does. Buffalo's down the road. They're in the division. But I'm saying, like, why is Detroit not in and Buffalo is in? Why are the Florida teams, included in that and not, lumped in with the New York teams further,
right,
which are a lot closer, or at least a little bit closer. Who knows why they're going to do these things? But I mean, you look at some of the pie in the sky speculation. The idea that you would have a Great Lakes region kind of team where it's like Toronto, Cleveland, Detroit. Yeah, now you're talking, right? Like,
Cincinnati, I think, was thrown.
Yeah, Cincinnati you could throw in there.
Yeah, I saw it proposed, like,
maybe
what
Pittsburgh.
they could look like, and that was a team. Pittsburgh's not that far away.
That far away. Just a little bit down the road from Cleveland, little south. So, I mean, there are scenarios you can sketch out where the geographically close teams for the Blue Jays are essentially financial weaklings.
Yeah.
And that would be a very good development if you're Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins and the Rogers Corporation.
It would be. It certainly would be. So we'll get Steve Phillips' thoughts on that as well. Join us at 5:05. Farhan Ladji at 5:30. Get his thoughts on another busy weekend in the CFL. Preseason week 2 in the books around the NFL. Ross Tucker going to join us at 6:05. And Lawrence Applebaum at 6:30 going to join us as well. Get into some golf action. What a shot by Scotty Scheffler.
Oh.
One of the best shots I've ever seen. Like, that is going to end up, in a montage someday when they put out the 30 for 30 about Scotty Scheffler, and that might be the one where it's like best shot he's ever had.
Yeah, I mean, and of course
he's had a lot of them.
Scotty being Scotty, he's like, it's just a straightforward chip. That's where I wanted to.
Oh yeah, 81 foot chip that just rolls forever and ever and ever, and just drops in. Unbelievable! Like, this guy is just so good. So Lawrence Applebaum going to join us at 6:30 to get into that. Couple Canadians advancing to the Tour Championship, so that's exciting. In Corey Connors and Nick Taylor. But I think the big news here in Toronto today is the Raptors have appointed Bobby Webster, the team's head of basketball operations, not the president. He's not getting the president's role, but he's being appointed as head of basketball operations. You're very intertwined with the ongoings of what happens here in the city of Toronto and management. Like, what did you make of that when you heard about this morning?
I mean, what do you know? Like, who could have seen this coming? I'll tell you what, when on the day Masai Ujiri was fired and it was announced that they're hiring this global CAA executive search firm to go search high and low for the next Masai Ujiri, for the next Raptors president, I don't think there was anybody tightly involved with this that thought they would end up saying, oh, let's just give it to the guy that's sitting next to Masai, And by the way, let's go searching for a president, but let's not name a president. You're not president, Bobby. You're head.
Yeah.
You're not executive VP. You're head.
Like, what are we?
How is head for a title?
I have no idea what this means. Like, obviously, he's going to have more control, I suppose, of what goes on. But now I question, like, well, how much control did he have then? At the start. And there's always been a little bit of convolution when it comes to how much of this team, how much fingerprints was Masai compared to, how much say did Bobby Webster have as a team's GM. And I guess that is one thing that we probably will find out moving forward, the difference of, all right, well, what was Masai and then what was Bobby based on how the differences go and how this team is operated over the course of the next few months, I'd imagine.
Look, I mean, there's no mistaking who was in charge of everything in Raptorland since 2013 when Masai Ujiri arrived here, and it's been Masai Ujiri's team from the day he got here, right? So,
well, I get, but then like Keith Pelley comes out today, and there were comments like, it made all the sense in the world to give Bobby a chance to see his plan develop. Well, whose plan? Well, I thought it was Masai's plan. So if that's the case. Like, is he moving on with Masai's plan? Is it his own plan? Are we going in a different direction here with the Raptors? I'm kind of confused as to where we're going here.
That is it. No, I see why you would be. I mean, the whole thing's confusing. I mean,
right.
It doesn't make a ton of sense because everybody else was under the impression they were going to look for a new president and name a new president, and now they have not done that. And they're saying, yeah, we may name a new president in the future, but not today, not right now. For now, we are going to be in a holding pattern with the guy who was Masai's number 2 as the new number 1, but we're not giving him the president's title, and presumably we're not giving him the kind of money we would need to give him to be president.
Well, that's the other conversation too. Is like how much of this is a fiscal decision, you think?
Well, Masai Ujiri was making a lot of money, and I can tell you right now that
he's still
Bobby
making
Webster,
a lot of money.
Yes, he's being paid for next season until the end of next season. I'm not sure exactly the arrangement of how he'll get that money, but he will get it, knowing Masai. Bottom line is, it's a new era with an old face, and it's not unlike the massive search, Al's brother, that they held to find Dwayne Casey's successor. They hunted high and low. They interviewed a cast of many, to see who would replace Dwayne Casey as Raptors head coach. Mike Budenholzer was in there. Torrey Messina, the great European assistant down in San Antonio. I can't remember all the names that were on the list of people who interviewed and were considered to replace Dwayne Casey. And then you know what they did? They
went with the guy who sat next to him for years.
With the guy that sat next to him for years. So it's exactly the same thing, essentially. But to your point about the plan, look, Bobby Webster was involved in this interview process run by this search firm that I'm sure Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment paid a very good buck to run this search for them. And everybody involved in those types of searches, knowing what we know from past experience and from, anecdotal observations from this experience from people who've been involved in it. I mean, you present a plan. Like you have to bring your PowerPoint to the interview, and you say, this is how I see this team. This is what I think of the roster now. This is what I would do with it tomorrow if I was named president. This is how I think we can get better. This is how I think we're limited in ways we can get better. This is what we need to succeed. This is what I don't think we need. This is where Masai got it right. This is where Masai got it wrong. Bobby Webster is no different. Dwayne Casey was in on this. He had to do that. Kevin Pritchard of the Indiana Pacers was in on this. Everybody that was involved in this had to present a vision for the Raptors to Keith Pelly. And I'm sure Bobby had a very clear vision of what he saw. And now Keith Pelly has bought into it and said, we'll give you a chance.
Well, it's a new era in Raptorland, I guess. Maybe.
Kind of same like the old era. But
possibly. But, hey, when they made that change from Dwayne Casey, right, they did win a championship with Nick Nurse when they made that swap.
And with Kawhi Leonard.
A
little addition named Kawhi Leonard.
You saying Brandon Ingram doesn't provide the same gravitas as Kawhi Leonard? Is that what you're telling me, Dave?
That's exactly what I'm talking about, brother. But not that Brandon
I would tend
Ingram,
to agree.
Brandon Ingram has a chance to be good if he ever plays.
Yeah, no, that's
Who
fair.
knows?
Well, Josh Lundberg, our TSN Raptors reporter, he'll join us next. We'll get back into this story and get his thoughts on what went down today in Raptorland. I'm Mike DeStefano with Dave Feschuk. We're on TSN2, the TSN app, and live up on YouTube.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights.
Overdrive continues on TSN 1050, live on TSN 2, live on YouTube. Mike DeStefano filling in for Brian Hayes, the captain. Hazy B will be back next week. And I've got Dave Feshuk of the Toronto Star with me. Some breaking news earlier today. The Toronto Raptors decided to name Bobby Webster the head of basketball operations. Not the president, just the head of basketball operations. What exactly does that mean? Our next guest will tell us. It's Josh Lewinberg, our TSN Raptors reporter. What's going on, Josh?
Not much. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. The Raptors gave us a nice spicy topic here to chat about on a wonderful Monday. Bobby Webster named the president, or not named president, rather named head of basketball operations. What exactly does that mean, Josh?
Yeah, probably not a coincidence that they fired Masai on a Friday and then they promoted Bobby on a Monday. But yeah, I don't know if we can call this a promotion, maybe a quasi-promotion in the sense that, yes, it comes with new responsibilities. It sounds like a new contract and probably a nice raise, more pressure and all of that. But while Bobby gets Masai's old job, he doesn't get the title, as you mentioned. He's going to be running basketball operations from the GM spot, and they're not going to hire a president for now. It's not entirely unusual in the sense that, like, look, team president is not even something that really existed in this organization up until, like, fairly recently. I think Brian Colangelo comes in, and it was a big get at the time. They needed to dangle a fancy title in front of him. Even Masai, when they brought him back, and that was obviously a huge coup by Tim Leiweke in 2013, he wasn't the president when they hired him. He was, by title, the general manager, and ultimately was elevated to president. I think it's about half of the league right now that is operating without a designated president, including, by the way, the reigning champs, Sam Presti, for all of his many accomplishments, and he's been there forever. Technically, he's listed as the GM, and he, like Bobby Webster is about to do, reports to ownership. So every team, every sport has different structures and hierarchies in the front office. I don't think it's entirely unusual, and it's actually a solution that I floated last month. I mean, call it what you want, maybe a half measure. I kind of think of it more as a compromise, where the sense that I got pretty early in the process is that MLSE wasn't convinced that Bobby Webster, experienced but still young as an executive, they weren't convinced that he was ready for the president gig. Now, that's kind of reflected in the fact that they did this extensive search, and it's certainly reflected in the end result here. But if they weren't enamored with any of the external candidates, and they interviewed a number of them, including, as I understand and has been reported as well, Pacers GM Chad Buchanan, Bulls GM and Canadian Mark Eversley, and then, of course, a name that Raptors fans are familiar with, Dwayne Casey, who I'm told met with MLSE 3 times last month. If they weren't enamored with any of the guys they could get with what I understand is a pretty modest budget, then this allows them to continue grooming Bobby and Dan Tolzman and see how it looks. Like, they can see how these guys do in their elevated roles, ultimately see how this team that they helped build fares this season. And if they don't like how it looks, they still have the flexibility to pivot. That I think there's a reason why this new front office hierarchy is etched in pencil and not in permanent ink. I think that a team that, as I described it last month, had a lot of nervous energy around it. A lot of these guys can take a bit of a sigh of relief, breathe a sigh of relief, but none of them are safe in the sense that, like, I think this is still very much a fluid situation moving forward over the next few years.
So, Josh, we were just talking, Al's brother and I, about how this sort of reminiscent in some ways of the massive, extensive search that took place in the wake of firing Dwayne Casey, and there were all kind of candidates considered to take over the head coaching position. And then in the end, they went with the guy that was sitting next to Dwayne Casey and Nick Nurse. And, of course, Nick Nurse defied, every expectation and was a very different coach than Dwayne Casey, even though he'd been sitting next to Dwayne all those years. I mean, when knowing what you know about Bobby and what you heard today on the conference call that he conducted with various members of the media, how do you think Bobby might be able to differentiate himself from Masai Ujiri?
Yeah, no, I love that comparison, and it's one that I used in the story that I wrote last month in making the case for Bobby, because I think the assumption that people are going to make here, same assumption that was made when Nurse was hired, is that, okay, well, you've got two people that have been working together for a very long time. You get rid of one of them, which probably means that you're at least looking for some semblance of change. Why are you bringing in his top lieutenant? But I think what that proved is, despite the fact that they had worked very closely together for many years, as we later learned, I mean, Nick Nurse and Dwayne Casey are two very, very different people with very different qualities, strengths, weaknesses, all that, and certainly two different visions and coaching styles. Now, I don't think that this is going to play out quite in that way, in the sense that, look, I think Bobby's vision from a basketball standpoint is probably pretty similar to Masai's. I don't think they were lockstep on every decision that was made, but I mean, even on the record, Bobby has spoken over the years about valuing the same type of players that Masai does, the long, athletic, versatile wings that may or may not be able to shoot. So I don't think, from that standpoint, we're going to see, a drastically different team. But what's interesting, what I was told, was that a number of the external candidates that came in really, really pushed back on some of the moves that Masai and company made over the last few years. One of them went as far as calling the Ingram trade a desperate Hail Mary. And that's not surprising, right? I think a number of them also pointed out the fact that the Raptors are in a bit of a cap crunch and paying a lot of money for a team that kind of tops out right now as a play-in group. So the fact that they ultimately decided to stay in-house tells us a few things. I mean, first of all, it reiterates what we already knew, in that the Masai firing had more to do with money than vision. But it also tells us that this new-look ownership group, led, of course, by Keith Pelly and the Rodgers-controlled board, that they still believe in this team. But, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's going to come down to what happens on the court this season, whether this vision that Masai had, that is probably inherited now by Bobby, actually works. Where I do expect to see some changes, or at least some differences, is a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that might not be reflected in the roster, in the sense that, while their vision might not be entirely different, these are two very, very different people. Masai, as we know, larger-than-life personality and persona. Bobby's not that guy, and I don't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing. I think he's more understated, down to earth, certainly easier to relate with. Masai, I mean, over the years, he became a celebrity, and I think there are just certain things that go with that, whereas Bobby, he can dress down. He's still young enough to relate to a lot of the players and fans and just people around. He can chop it up with anybody, whereas he could also put on the suit, and he's highly regarded and respected by his peers. I think he's shown over the years that he's certainly very capable, and more than just the cap manager that a lot of people kind of typecast him as when he first got here. So I think he's certainly deserving of the opportunity to show what he can do, but I don't know. He has been involved in everything that the Raptors have done, the Masai Ujiri has done over the last decade plus,
right?
But he hasn't had final say on any of it. So, yeah, like a lot of people, I'm interested to see what a Bobby Webster-led front office and what a Bobby Webster team looks like.
Well, does this change, I guess, the expectations moving forward, for this team, whether it's this year or the year after? Is there anything that changes from what the ownership expects of this group with this change?
Yeah, well, again, I think it speaks to the fact that ownership is completely behind the current plan. And the current plan, as far as Masai Ujiri left it, was to push forward, right? The rebuild is more or less over. They've gone all in on Brandon Ingram, and more or less all in on this core because, again, very expensive group. I think it's the 8th highest payroll in the NBA, despite the fact that they've won a combined 55 games over the last 2 years and have the 22nd highest win projection going into this season. So, yeah, I mean, Masai believed that this team was ready to take the next step and to compete for a playoff spot in what is a very diluted Eastern Conference this year. And the fact that it's kind of status quo here in terms of the front office tells us that at least in the short term, that's the goal, that's the expectation. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's such a temporary solution that if it doesn't work, they've left a lot of room here for change.
Well, I'm just curious, though. Like, so if they're happy with, the work that Masai and Bobby have done, they want to move forward with this direction, like, doesn't it kind of make it, I don't know, a little more confusing as to why they moved on from Masai in the first place then?
Yeah, I mean, it was confusing then in terms of the on-the-record explanation given by Keith Pelly at that press conference.
Right.
But I think we all have a pretty good idea of why the move was made. I mean, there are some people that subscribe to the idea that it was something personal between Edward Rogers and Masai Ujiri. I don't really subscribe to that, at least not fully, because I mean, Masai Ujiri isn't the only president that MLSE has moved on from over the last year. Bill Manning on the soccer side, and then, of course, Brendan Shanahan on the hockey side. And by the way, neither of them were replaced, and that's why I think it certainly wasn't surprising that they moved on from Masai Ujiri, given his contractual status, both that he was up for a new contract and probably an even bigger payday, but also his current salary pays him a base salary of $15 million annually. And while the new deal for Bobby Webster is like the details and the terms are not disclosed, I think it's safe to assume that he's making a fraction of that Masai Ujiri salary. And that's maybe why they weren't able to attract more interest and more bigger names in their search for this position. If they weren't willing to pay top dollar, then yeah, I mean, I heard the name Kevin Pritchard, the Indiana president, as somebody that they were interested in. But if they weren't willing to pay top dollar, how are you going to lure someone in a lateral move, a lateral position over from a team that just made it to the NBA Finals, So I think ultimately you kind of get what you pay for. The budget was what it was. And now, as I said, this allows you to groom some younger people and people that you're familiar with. It also reinforces the plan here. It's just, I think what's unclear at this point is like, what's the ceiling here? What's the long-term plan? Okay, this year you push for a playoff spot, certainly a play-in spot, very, very doable, again, given the Eastern Conference. But like, I don't know that anybody is looking at this roster and saying, okay, well, this is a team that's going to compete for championships in the near future. Scotty Barnes continues to be the ultimate wild card there, where, like, if he goes to the moon this season, if he explodes and really develops as a top 10, top 15 caliber player in the NBA, then all of a sudden we have to rethink that ceiling. But again, based on what we've seen over the last few years, Scotty's a really good player. Brandon Ingram, really good player, but I don't see that kind of trajectory, at least right now, from any of these players, meaning you're stuck with a very expensive, very average team. And outside of the one guy at the top who's been relieved of his duties, this entire leadership team remains the same. And that's why I wrote last month, like, being around this team in Vegas, a team that is almost entirely intact from what it was last year, a lot of nervous energy. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very strange situation. I can understand, again, given like the Bill Manning and the Brendan Shanahan of it all, why they ultimately decided to put off hiring a president with the basketball team as well. But I think this is going to be kind of a prove-it type of year, not only for this team, but for the guys running it, because if things don't go well, then I would be really, really surprised if the front office remained largely intact at this time next year.
Well, Josh, that's a great way to put it. I interpret it the same way. It's a prove-it kind of deal for Bobby Webster. They're almost dangling the idea that you could be president one day, but you're going to have to show us that you deserve to be president. And by doing, to do that, you're going to have to make this team relevant again competitively, which they haven't been for quite some time. And I'm wondering, Josh, when you think about money here, and money is central to this whole operation, and when we're talking about the disappearance of these presidents and a lot of other things that are happening around Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, this is a team, as you point out, that's got a really high payroll. They're paying premium prices for a lot of these players. If you're Bobby Webster and you're in line to be a tax team right now, the way it's sitting, I mean, you probably have to cut some of that, right? And where do you go to cut some of this payroll if you're kind of reading the tea leaves of you don't want to be a mediocre team with a championship expense payroll?
Yeah, well, more often than not, where there's smoke, there's fire. Not all the time, but certainly a lot of the time when it comes to trade rumors in the NBA. And we've heard the name R.J. Barrett quite a bit this summer. And again, I think there's something there in the sense that, he's a guy that kind of become a bit redundant on the roster with the addition of Brandon Ingram. I know there's been a lot of concern about, okay, well, how are Ingram and Scotty Barnes going to coexist on the floor? And sure, there are some questions there, but I think the bigger question is, how are RJ and BI going to coexist on the floor at similar positions, occupying similar spots on the floor, with similar strengths and similar weaknesses? And to RJ's credit, I mean, he has really increased his value, I think, in terms of the quality of player that he is during his time with the Raptors. He's really impressed, I think, here, but has become an expendable piece, especially considering the salary situation and the fact that he's got only a couple years left on his contract, whereas all these other guys are under contract for longer term. So they've got to make a decision on him. I think the good news here is that despite the cap crunch that they're under, you can go into the season even a little bit over the cap, as I believe they are right now, and still have a few months to figure it out. Ultimately, tax doesn't get charged until game 82. So while I think they're more or less done right now, in fact, I know that one of the things that they told not just Bobby during the interview process, but all the external candidates as well, is that this decision is being made for the future, at least the near future, that right now there's nothing to be done. The roster is set. I don't expect any big moves to be made before training camp and before opening night. But if you told me that R.J. Barrett was moved at the trade deadline, or even somebody like Ochai Agbaji, if they really wanted to nitpick and get under the tax by moving a smaller salary, there are moves that are going to need to be made here, especially if this team doesn't excel and really get off to a hot start. So I do think that's one of the reasons why you want Bobby Webster around. Not to say that he's the only guy that's good with numbers, but he is a guy who is very, very good with numbers. That's his background in the NBA, coming from the league office where he helped create one of the previous CBAs. He's really good at kind of figuring things out in that regard, and I think you can have some confidence in the fact that he'll figure out a way to shape the roster to potentially avoid the luxury tax. But at the same time, there's only so many small moves that you can make to change what is a really tough financial situation that the Raptors find themselves in. So while that's a strength that he has, I think, again, he's going to need to demonstrate a few other strengths in terms of his eye for talent and his ability to make some savvy and shrewd moves here to get this team over the top.
Well, we'll see how it all unfolds, Josh. We'll see how it all unfolds. Should be a fascinating upcoming season for the Raptors. Appreciate the time as always, pal.
All right, guys. Talk soon.
Absolutely. Josh Lundberg, our TSN Raptors reporter. Yeah, the problem is it's an average basketball team. That's the issue. They're good enough to maybe make a run and make the playoffs, more likely a play-in team, but they're over the apron. It's a weird team to roll and continue with that same plan, that same vision. It's just a little perplexing to me. If you didn't like what was going on before, what are we doing here?
Well, in some ways, AB, I agree with you that, they're not on a great track right now. They're paying a lot of money for a lot of guys who've done very little to prove to you that they can be the heart of a championship level team. And you've got championship level expenses on your payroll, right? Like, this is a very high payroll team. You know, the Emmanuel Quickley contract has been sort of dragged around the NBA this summer as a real bad precedent that other restricted free agents are pointing to as that's the contract I want. That. And teams are saying, no, we're not giving you that.
Not.
Only the Raptors would give somebody that deal, given Emmanuel Quickley's resume. And the Ingram contract has not been treated particularly kindly when, you know, Ingram's own agent has gone on the record saying, I couldn't have got that $40 million a year anywhere else other than in Raptorland. Not a good look for the Raptors, right? And I understand these things happen, and the Raptors are in a unique position as the only team above the 49th parallel and the only team outside the United States. But bottom line is they're not in a great spot, and to be the kind of team they hope they can be. And it's going to take some tweaking. More than tweaking, it's going to take some reimagining of how you move some of that money out and move better money in. And now it's on Bobby Webster in what looks like a pretty short window here, because there was no mention of a multi-year extension in the press release. We don't know the exact terms here, but if it was a multi-year deal, they would have said it was a multi-year deal.
Right.
It seems like he's got a pretty short timeline here to say, I have a vision that will get us a place we haven't been in a while. And Keith Pelley's basically said, yeah, go prove that to me, and then we'll talk about the presidency.
Yeah, I do find it interesting, too, how, like Josh was saying, that fair amount of people who interviewed for that presidency role came in and said they didn't like what was going on with the Raptors, not a fan of a couple of trades and extensions, the Ingram situation. And meanwhile, they decided, well, we like it, and we're going to continue with that. And, well, here we are. We'll see. Best of luck to Bobby Webster. He's a great guy. You know, he comes on the show all the time. He's been around. He's technically won a championship as the general manager of the Toronto Raptors. So we'll see what he can do with a bit more responsibilities. And who knows, maybe, just like we were surprised by Nick Nurse, perhaps Bobby can surprise us and, move forward and get this vision going as well. We'll see what happens there. Steve Phillips still to join the show at 5:05. Farhan Lalji at 5:30. And Lawrence Applebaum can join us at 6:30 as well. I'm Mike DeStefano with Dave Feschuk. You're listening to OverDrive on TSN 1050, live on TSN 2, and live on YouTube.
Take my breath away and make it last forever, babe. Do it now or never, babe. Take my breath away.
Overdrive continues on TSN 1050, live on TSN 2 and on YouTube. Mike DeStefano here, Dave Feshuk of the Toronto Star, and all summer long been doing these brackets here on TSN 1050. And this week we got a brand new bracket that we are unveiling now. You can go and go vote on the TSN 1050 Twitter account. We're looking at the worst Toronto sports trades. Just off the top of your head, can you think of a couple, Dave? I'll let you know where they are on our bracket here.
I mean, I always think about, because this is Overdrive, because the legacy of John Ferguson Jr. is never far from the top of the mind.
Yeah,
I can neither confirm or deny that.
Thank you, JP. Because of that, I always think about that little goaltender named Tuukka Rask that was drafted by the Leafs but never played for the Leafs.
Yeah, that's the number one seed.
Yeah,
that's the number one seed here on this one. I would imagine that is a really good chance to win. It's matched up against Soroka to the Jays, that trade that didn't turn out too well. The Tyler Biggs trade. You remember the Tyler Biggs? It's not necessarily, it was a trade of draft picks, but the draft picks that the Leafs gave up to move up to take Tyler Biggs turned into Rickard Rakell and John Gibson.
That's right.
Two players that the Maple Leafs certainly could have used over the course of the last, 12 years ago that draft was? Maybe, that was like 15 years ago. That was 2011, I think. It was like 15 years ago, that draft now.
Yeah, and the worst part about that was that, they got Tyler Biggs, and that was during the Brian Burke era where they were
truculence.
Like, we're not drafting anybody under 6'2", man.
Yeah.
None of these small guys are going to play for us.
There were some good players, too, that went right after that.
Yeah, and then they said, oh, yeah, you knew the red flag, Al's brother, when they said, he's not a goal scorer, but we're going to try and turn him into one. Because when does that ever work,
It's
right?
never positive, though, when Bob McKenzie hops on the broadcast and you're like, player comparison, like, yeah, it projects to be a fourth-line center. It's like your first-round pick. He's a projected fourth-line center.
And he never turned into that.
And he didn't even turn into that, sadly. That was a pretty bad one. Kadri to the Avalanche for Tyson Barrie. That's on here. The Kessel deal is on here. Vince Carter to the Nets. New Jersey Nets at the time.
That was a bad trade, but
that was a tough one.
Blame Vince.
Blame Vince. All right, that'll do it for hour one. Hour two coming up next.
This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Five o'clock hour of OverDrive off and running. Mike DiStefano in for Brian Hayes, the fast truck of the Toronto Star. In with me, we'll be joined by Steve Phillips in just a couple of minutes. And we got some breaking news for the Blue Jays. Shane Bieber starting Friday against the Miami Marlins. You excited for that?
Who isn't? I mean, we were waiting for this for a while now, right? Through the rehab starts down in Buffalo, and now the guy that they made the crown jewel of their trade deadline is ready to go in the big leagues.
Well, it comes at a good time because Jose Barrios has not pitched particularly well down the stretch. He's got like a 5.68 ERA over his last, I think since July 1st.
Yeah.
I was looking it up. A 5.68 ERA since July 1st. And the velo's taken a bit of a dip. He's given up some home runs. So he could probably use an extra day's rest. I'm sure a lot of these guys who've pitched a lot of innings could use an extra day's rest. So that six-man rotation is coming in at a good time. But I'm excited for this. Like, when he was traded to Toronto, there's a lot of excitement around this, obviously, and he's pitched extremely well in his three major league or minor league outings. I think he pitched like 7 scoreless last week in his last outing. So
Really
he's starting to find it right. He throws strikes. This is encouraging. This is exciting to see Shane Bieber, and now it's getting to a point where Gossman's on the mound tonight. He's pitched great over the course of the last 5-6 games. He's been unbelievable. Max Scherzer is starting to turn into Max Scherzer of old. And you bring Shane Bieber into the fold, all of a sudden, like, Dave, you got a pretty vaunted 1, 2, 3 in your rotation come playoff time.
And you got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-man rotation in the meantime, unless Barrios is going somewhere, to your point, which he may be eventually, because I know the man we're about to talk to here, Steve Phillips, has sort of put him forward as a potential bullpen solution for the Blue Jays in the games that matter into the fall. So, which is a possibility, right? But man, it's if it goes to plan, Al's brother, and to your point, you know, Scherzer is the Scherzer or a reasonable facsimile of the Scherzer of old, and then Bieber can be some kind of reasonable facsimile of the Cy Young Bieber of 5 years ago. Now that he's come out of this Tommy John surgery era and appears to be quite healthy and ready to roll. I mean, it's almost an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
And some very tough choices are going to be coming here for Mr. Schneider and the Blue Jays front office that obviously has a big say in this stuff.
If you had to make a bet, let's say FanDuel had a prop out there for which of these two pitchers would pitch more innings come postseason, Max Scherzer or Shane Bieber, who would you hitch your wagon to?
I think it's Bieber all the way, just because he's younger, right? I mean, Scherzer's. I mean, let's be honest here. He's this is a guy that's well past.
He's up to like 90-ish pitches every outing. Like,
yeah, I'm not saying it can't happen,
going.
but I do think. Look, I mean, Bieber's just. I guess it's more of a toss-up than maybe you think, but they don't want to push it too far with Scherzer, right? I mean, you got to be careful there because every season of recent memory has ended in not particularly ideal circumstances for him health-wise, right? So you don't want to push that one too far. I'm sure there's a lot of research and sports science being pushed into how do we keep Max Scherzer healthy and what are the limits and the parameters, that are going to keep him on the field and not on the training table. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's a romp that Bieber's going to pitch way more, but if I had to guess, I mean, and you had to bet, I would say Bieber's much more likely to pitch a lot more.
Yeah, I think you can make that argument for sure. Like, he's coming off the injury too, though, which is why it's we'll see what happens. And do you want to push that elbow, that reconstructed elbow, and whether or not he'll be able to do it against major league talent, I guess remains to be seen.
But the thing with the Tommy John surgery, there's a playbook, right? And there's a ton of case studies, right? Like almost everybody gets it nowadays. So the Major League Baseball has so much information on how long it takes to come back and the best way to do it. There's no playbook for age. There's no playbook for I'm just old.
This is true.
Okay.
Unless you're Tom Brady. That guy's
unless-
got a good playbook
well,
for that.
he's the outlier, and everybody else is the rest of humanity, and all of us get old. So, and Scherzer looks great. Don't get me wrong. It's been incredible to watch him pitch and to watch him compete. And if he's Mad Max or anything close to that, he's in your rotation. He's in your top three.
Oh, I
No doubt
agree.
about it.
He's definitely going to be in the rotation, which is kind of wild to think about. Like when that signing was first made, it was definitely a signing where people were excited, right? Oh, we get to watch Max Scherzer, one of the best pitchers of the last 15 years. But then it was also met with skepticism where it's, well, how long are we going to get to watch Max Scherzer? And then he started out training camp with that thumb issue, the ligament problem. But that doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. He's now pitching, 90, pitching into the upper 90s for his pitch count. He's going 7 innings against, over the weekend there. So
Great sign.
Yeah, it's a really good sign to see him get going. Shane Bieber going to join the rotation come Friday. You got Gausman on the mound tonight. So it's a good time to be a Blue Jays rotation arm. That's for sure. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota hotline is Steve Phillips, former Mets GM, TSN baseball analyst. How's it going, Steve?
I'm doing great, guys. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. Well, we were just talking about how the Blue Jays going to get a new arm put into this rotation. Sounds like Shane Bieber is getting ready to make his first start as a Blue Jay on Friday. What would you be looking for out of him in this start?
I think he stretched out to 90 pitches, so I think that I think it's just going to come down all the way to performance. If he's able to go anywhere from 90 to 100 pitches, I let him go. And ideally, love for him to get into the 6th inning or through 6 innings. But the one thing about him, he's always been an efficient pitcher. He's a strike-throwing machine. And he has looked on his rehab starts like the guy who's been, Cy Young Award winner candidate in the past, and that, he's getting a lot of swing and miss, not a lot of base runners. His whip has been good. He doesn't walk anybody. He's got the courage to throw stuff over the plate early in the at-bat to then expand the zone later in the at-bat, and he's been that guy on his rehab start. So, my hope would be that he's going to be, not necessarily Cy Young Bieber, but, a guy that, like the rest of this group, is a very capable, competitive starting pitcher that can get you through 6 innings and leave with a chance to win.
Hey, Steve, obviously a lot of great news around the Blue Jay pitching staff with this revelation that Bieber's going to be making his Major League debut for the Blue Jays on Friday. Barrios is the one outlier that hasn't been really heading in the right direction. Al's brother was just pointing out the stat. In his last 9 starts going back to July 1st, he's got a 5.68 ERA. He got touched up for 6 earned runs yesterday in losing to the Rangers. What do you make of that regression from Barrios, and does it change the way you feel about the way he'll factor into the Blue Jays' plan down the stretch here?
Yeah, I think right now, if it were today and they had to narrow the rotation down to, 3 pitchers, if it's going to be a division series, or 4 starters, if it's a LCS, he's probably not one of those 3 or 4. I think that, in the ideal world, I probably wouldn't mind moving him to the bullpen as it is, not even making an issue. I'd probably go with a 6-man rotation a couple times through. But my view all along is that I think he could be a weapon out of the bullpen. I think his fastball plays up if he comes in 1 inning at a time. And that slider, the breaking ball he has, is just a wipeout pitch, that sweeper. Now, he's got to, sometimes that breaking ball is so big it's difficult for him to control. And then when a hitter can then say, okay, well, you know what, I'm just going to look for your fastball because you can't seem to throw that other pitch over the plate. It makes it much easier on the hitter. I think that if he's able to come in as a reliever and come in and air it out for a minute with that fastball and then expand the zone, throwing it in that same spot, throwing it off the plate with a sweeper, I think he's got a chance to be really good. So, look, the reality is that not everybody's going to be in the rotation. I suspect one of the right-handers, either Bassett or Barrios, is in the bullpen with Eric Lauer, and the other 4 have a shot to be starters in the postseason.
Kevin Gausman, another one of those guys who's vying for one of those starts. He goes tonight, taking on Paul Skenes, arguably the best pitcher in the game right now. How excited are you for a matchup like this to watch tonight?
No, I think it's great. I think over I think a lot of this is good preparation for postseason baseball. I mean, DeGrom, of all these schemes, you faced the best pitchers in the game on the other teams in the postseason. You're going to get really good pitching, and so putting together quality at bats. What's the approach? Force them to throw it over the plate, or you work the count enough, you get them out of the game, and you get into the bullpen and give yourself a chance to beat the opposition later in the game. So, it'll be interesting to see what the Jays' approach is tonight. I think that with Skenes, if it's a fastball and it's down, it's okay, be aggressive. But if it's down in the zone and you read anything other than fastball, you got to let it go. Whether it's the split, the splinker that he has, the slider that he has, because generally, if he throws it at the bottom of the zone, that pitch is going to break out of the zone to get you to chase. Especially if he's been able to locate the fastball early. So, this comes down to what is the report, what is the approach you're going to take against the quality pitcher, and understand that it's going to be really difficult to lump four singles together in an inning to put up a crooked number. And so you've got to take advantage of every opportunity. If there's an error, if there's a walk, if there's the ability to go first to third on a base hit, then you've got to pick up that runner. You can't waste those opportunities when you're facing an ace. And you've also got to try to get them early before they get settled in. So that approach will be interesting, but I think it's good preparation for October baseball to face some of these aces on other teams.
Steve, a lot of excitement in Toronto today, reading into the comments made by Commissioner Rob Manfred about the idea that expansion could be in baseball's future. And expansion would come, in Manfred's world, with realignment. And, Blue Jays fans are always eager to hear a scenario where maybe the perils of the American League East they'd be freed from those to maybe, compete against the Clevelands and the Detroits and the Pittsburghs of the world instead of the Bostons and New Yorks. What did you read into Manfred talking about the potential for expansion and what you think realignment could mean if indeed we saw it coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so the idea is that geographic realignment to cut down on travel and the wear and tear on players, because it is a grind over the course of a season with all of the travel. The idea is that you want East Coast teams to play East Coast teams more, West Coast teams to play West Coast teams more, and therefore you get more hit for the sports networks, where you're going to see West Coast, you're going to have an East Coast game at 7:00, where both teams are East Coast teams and the viewership will be high. And then you're going to have two West Coast teams playing on the 10 p.m. Eastern time or 7 p.m. Pacific time, which will give you more impact for viewership and therefore affect ratings differently for broadcasting. Now, I personally don't see any scenario where I would think it would be reasonable or appropriate that you would have the Yankees, the Mets, the Phillies, and the Red Sox in one division. Like, I keep reading scenarios where, this will be the Northeast. Like, no, there's no way that would be fair or appropriate. The idea isn't to set up a small mid-market, Midwest divisions to give, lesser teams, like Detroit, Kansas City, the White Sox, and the Guardians a better shot at making the playoffs. I mean, I honestly don't think that they'll get a sign-off on that from ownership. I don't like, having, 8 conferences instead of an American League and a National League. I still want there to be an American League and National League. I don't think that the Mets and Yankees should be in the same division. I don't think the White Sox and Cubs should be in the same division. And I don't think the Angels and Dodgers should be in the same division. I think there should be that now maybe it'll change and, they'll go to the format for the NBA and try to go about it that way. But from my perspective, I think you've got to have a balance of, large markets and middle markets, small markets within the conferences that you're creating. in order to be appropriately fair to everybody.
With Steve Phillips, earlier today, Mark Shapiro was on MLB Network Radio, and he was asked about Bo Bichette and a potential extension or how talks might be going with him. And he basically said, that doesn't happen in baseball. We don't talk extension in August and September. You're a man who's been in that position. I guess, why is that just isn't a thing apparently in Major League Baseball? And ultimately, where are you at with Bo Bichette when it comes to the type of coin that he might be due for this upcoming winter?
Yeah, it doesn't happen in baseball because, with the way free agency works and, the idea for a guy like Bichette, it makes no sense for him to negotiate right now with one team when he can go out, where there's not a salary cap. There's not a salary level or threshold for a type of a free agent player where you categorize him and this is the category where he makes this much money. This sport doesn't do that. And so it's an open market, unlike other sports where there are salary caps. And so, it behooves the player to have 8 teams come calling in interest in him so that, and where the teams can't get a sense as to where the player fits on their payroll and how much they're willing to pay. And so, teams can be led by agents down a path to think, okay, I better keep putting more money in if I'm going to get the player. So, at this point, the only benefit would be to the team, not the player, to try to get a deal done. We're not getting chased by other teams. So, for Bichette, I think he's an intriguing guy because if he markets himself and says, like Bregman did last year, I'm willing to play shortstop or second base or third base, he could end up with 14 teams interested in him. And, with what he is as a player and, as a person, and, he's a contact hitting guy, doesn't strike out a lot, which in this day and age of baseball is really valuable. Even if it means a little lesser on base percentage, putting it in play. And when you fly out to right and the runner tags from second to third, or you drive it to the right center gap and runners on first and second both tag go to second and third, it seems like it's an out for the hitter, but it's a positive result. And there's no real stat that captures that, but Bichette's that kind of guy because he puts it in play. He's going to have a lot of people interested. So the number's definitely going to start with a 2, I believe. $200+ million. And, the question is, how many teams get in? How many years can he start to squeeze? And can it end up starting with a 3?
Steve, when you talk about marketing yourself as a multi-position player, I mean, there's always that feeling that, yeah, you could do that, but a shortstop is going to be more marketable and more highly compensated than a second baseman. I mean, how do you think that works in the minds of a baseball executive if you're probably not paying the same price for a guy that's going to play second base for you as you would for a guy playing shortstop, are you?
Yeah, I think it just depends on your team and how much you really want to get the player. So, if you're the what team should I use as an example? The St. Louis Cardinals, and they're going to play Brendan Donovan in the outfield. They got Mason Wynn at shortstop, and they really want that centerpiece guy up around which to build. Then, if it fits your team and you're competing with other teams who are going to look at him as a shortstop, but you really want him, then you're going to pay the price the market says for who he is because you've already got the young shortstop that you can afford, that you don't have to pay that money. If you're the Athletics and you're looking for a guy to build around for the future and you've got Jacob Wilson, who's going to be your shortstop of the future, well, then you've got to spend money anyways because you've got to spend some portion on payroll, and you're going to go into a new place, and you really think Bichette's that guy around which you're going to build. You're going to pay him the premium, and so I agree with you that generally, we prioritize certain positions, and right-hand hitting first baseman in baseball don't get paid as much as some other players in other positions, but there are players who are the right fit at the right time that can really squeeze the money out. And Bregman was one of those guys, right? When you think about, where he was going to go and now he's going to opt out and teams can look at him as a second baseman or a third baseman and he maximized his dollar value. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, but I think Bichette's going to have plenty of suitors.
All right, Steve, we'll leave it there. Appreciate joining us as per usual. We'll chat again later in the week.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Steve Phillips, former Mets general manager, TSN baseball analyst. Steve Phillips, join us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Drive the built-in Canada fuel-efficient, fun-to-drive Toyota RAV4. Gas or hybrid models available. Visit mapletoyota.com. He's made a lot of money for himself this year. Bo Bichette.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about. It was so funny last summer, the discourse surrounding Bo Bichette. And look, I don't blame the Blue Jays for not making that investment a year ago, getting ahead of it, because, the year and a half before this was not great.
No.
You didn't know, okay, is this the start of the decline, or is this just an off year and a half? What we've seen this season, I think you could look at it and say, I think that was just a little bit of an off year for Bo Bichette last year. Injury riddled. Head wasn't in the game, but this year I think he's back to leading the league in hits again.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it's great to be Bo Bichette right now.
It really will be.
Things could not be going much better for Bo Bichette than they are right now, and he's going to get paid far more than we ever imagined last year when a lot of people were ready to run him out of town. You
bring up a good point, though, where it comes to what position is he going to market himself as.
Right.
Bo Bichette has come out publicly multiple times saying, I'm a shortstop. I want to be a shortstop. And a lot of that is because shortstops get paid far more than any other infield position gets paid. It's a more premier position. So it will be interesting to see if he decides to bend the knee there when he goes to free agency. Is that how he gets, like a seventh, eighth year on a contract? You know what I mean? Like if he's willing to be a little more flexible on his position, could that attract more teams? I think it's a worthwhile thing for him to consider at the very least.
I guess like any agent would love to hear that his client is willing to say whatever the team that wants to pay him the most wants to hear.
Yeah. The odds of him being a shortstop well into his 30s are very low anyway. So you're going to get moved around regardless at some point.
Right.
So you might as well just come out and appease other general managers and say, yeah, I'm willing to do that.
As long as you're not going to be a jerk about having to move to second base, which some guys can be, right?
Yeah.
We saw the controversy with Devers and how he didn't want to play ball with the Red Sox vision of where they wanted him to play, and it became so contentious that they had to move him out of town.
Yeah.
So that can be a problem. The bottom line is, look, as Steve says, there's going to be a lot of suitors for this guy if he keeps up doing what he's doing.
As there should be.
And there'll be more if he is openly willing to do whatever a team wants him to do, as long as that team is the highest bidder.
Yes, and as long as he continues this into the postseason. But I do want to play the Mark Shapiro clip that was on MLB Network Radio so we can get a sense of how exactly that conversation went and hear it from Mark Shapiro's mouth himself. So here that is.
It's always important to educate fans is there's no contracts that get done in August and September. Guys get this close to free agency. They work hard to get to that point. It's very possible to still re-sign them, but they need to go out there and understand, what the opportunities are for them in free agency. So that'll be something that Ross addresses when he puts together his off-season plan. And Bo will be certainly a priority and a part of that.
As he should be. But the one part that I did find very interesting was, the players need to understand what's out there for them.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's like, hey, we've offered him a strong deal. He needs to, if you let him go to open market, maybe he is overselling himself. And maybe that number that he's asking the Blue Jays for isn't there. And he's like, yeah, all right, go to market. See what happens.
Yeah, there's you could definitely read that subtext in there, right?
A little bit.
It comes down to the other thing, too, like, Rich Griffin made the point that, Vladdy would not be as valuable to any other team as he was to the Blue Jays, right? Which is why
Bo in the same position?
That's what I'm wondering. It's always been Vladdy and Bo. There's an aspect of his popularity, just like there was an aspect of Vladdy being the face of this franchise. Bo is 1A.
Right there.
He's
Robin, right? Like Batman. Like he's been Vladdy's Robin since 2018 when they both came up.
And there's an attachment there. There's a full stadium there every night right now that loves this guy in
Lots
a way
of 11s in the stands.
Yeah, and they love this guy in the way that I'm not sure any other market would love this guy.
Yeah.
At least not right now.
Right.
And so there's money to be made off that, right? There's attention if this is the attention economy, he gets more attention anywhere than than in Toronto, right? Like this is his home. This is his baseball home for now. And guess what? Sometimes I'm not sure what's popular in Toronto moves the needle in LA if you're the Dodgers, or moves the needle in Boston if you're the Red Sox. Not that he's not a good player, but I'm saying I think much like Vladdy, there might be a situation here where the Blue Jays are willing to pay a premium for a little bit of popularity on top of all the stats and all the other good baseball reasons. The popularity, it's worth something.
Well, but it's not just the popularity.
It's not just that, but
your second best player. And if you are looking to be a competitive team, you're a hell of a lot more competitive with Bo Bichette on it than off it.
He's your second best player for sure. He might be your MVP this season. And on top of that, he is one of your most beloved players. Yeah. And the beloved part, I mean,
good package for Bo Bichette.
It can't be underestimated.
Great package for a lot of leverage if you're Bo Bichette.
They didn't renovate the ballpark to be a better baseball team. They renovated it to be a richer baseball team.
Correct.
Okay? So guess what? When you fill that ballpark, or you're a big part of why that ballpark is filled, there's money to be made there.
It's the old saying, you got to spend money to make money.
Yeah.
It's the old saying there. Well, if you spend it on the field, I mean, it's a lot better than spending it elsewhere and not enjoying the outcome.
And the other thing is, AB, I think like a lot of things in life, like the advantage you have when you are the incumbent team, that you know everything about this guy. Like nobody in baseball knows more about Bo Bichette than the Toronto Blue Jays. They know all the good parts. They know all the bad parts. They've seen it all. They've seen down years. They've seen great years. They've seen, whatever problems he's had, whatever lack of problems he's had, because he's the son of a pro. He is a great pro by all accounts. I mean, there's an advantage in that too. And because of that, maybe you're a little more willing to give him that extra X number of dollars because it's better than the devil you don't know.
Right. Like it's a completely different situation, but it's also like the Florida Panthers decided to give a couple extra bucks to keep the band together.
Right.
And again, they won, so it's a lot easier to stomach that and do that. But for the Blue Jays, it's like, hey, we got a good thing going at least. Like this is the first time in the entire Shapiro and Atkins era that they've taken steps towards something that looks promising.
Yeah.
It would suck to have to blow it all up after 1 year of that because they were unwilling to pay one of their best players, homegrown players.
Well, the other scenario is the Marner scenario, where one of your homegrown guys.
Yeah, they gave him multiple contracts and multiple kicks at the can.
Well, no, but I'm saying the other scenario is one of your homegrown guys goes into the playoffs, does not produce what you hope he's going to produce when it matters most, because this team still hasn't won a playoff game.
Correct.
In the Vladdy and Bo era. And another playoff disappointment, it could take a little bit of the shine, not to mention a little bit of the dollar sign off of this whole scenario.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So we'll see how that all unfolds. They're in action tonight at PNC Park, taking on Paul Skenes. Kevin Gosman on the mound. We'll have our FanDuel best bets in a little bit. Farhan Lalji coming up next here on OverDrive. I'm Mike DeStefano with Dave Feschuk live on TSN 1050, TSN 2, and on YouTube.
Now, back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
Overdrive continues on TSN 50, live up on TSN 2 and on YouTube Live. Mike DiStefano filling in for Brian Hayes. Got Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star with me. Farhan Lalji can join us in a couple of minutes here. Pretty cool story, though, coming out of the NFL involving a Canadian quarterback, Taylor Elgersma, who's down in Green Bay Packer camp, actually played for Wilfrid Laurier of the U Sports. And it's not too, actually, it just doesn't happen where a Canadian born, bred, played university quarterback gets a shot in the NFL. Taylor Elgersma getting his opportunity. He was an undrafted free agent, but getting a chance, played about a quarter and a half against the Colts this weekend, went 7 for 11, 109 yards, and led to 3 scoring drives. So pretty cool story for the young Canadian.
It's an incredible story. I mean, this guy won the Heck Creighton Award as University Player of the Year in Canada, and he's a massive human being, 6'5", 227. So the measurables are there. But to your point, the legacy of Canadian quarterbacks that play in U Sports, what they used to call in our day, Al's brother, my day, the CIAU or the CIS.
Yeah, mine was CIS.
Yeah, it's been named many things over the years, but it's U Sports now. I mean, U Sports get no looks from NFL teams in general. And this guy goes down, and not only does he get a look, I mean, he shows some stuff.
Turning some heads a little bit.
And now Naylor, Dave Naylor was down there for TSN, our good colleague, and Naylor's making the point that this guy could be making a run at the number 3 spot for the Green Bay Packers, like 3rd on the depth chart, which is, pretty damn unprecedented.
Well, I mean, if he sticks with the Packers, right, even if it's just as a practice squad, like that's a story. Yeah. That is absolutely a story. You get a kid from a Canadian university who went against Canadian university talent, somehow gets his opportunity to go down to the States where he's now playing against the best in the world in the National Football League and wins a job with an organization as one of the top 60 players they feel necessary to sign and put onto their roster.
Yeah.
It would be a story.
Be a great story. And it could be only the beginning, right? I mean, the idea that if you're hanging around and they're giving you a chance to learn and to do all the stuff you need to do to become a real NFL quarterback, a guy that gets played in a regular season game and not just a preseason game, which is a ton of studying, understanding playbooks, understanding situations. I mean, Matt LaFleur, the coach of the Packers, had a lot of nice things to say about Elgersma after the game, but he also did point out, he put the ball in jeopardy a couple of times. He's got to be careful with that. But by all accounts, like Elgersma seems like the type of kid who's willing to learn, willing to understand that there's improvements to be made. Didn't throw an interception, like he threw for a lot of yards, did not throw an interception. I mean, engineers 3 scoring drives. I mean, this is impressive stuff. It's a long way to go, obviously.
Right.
I don't think he's exciting.
I don't think Jordan Love is worried about his starting spot when it comes to Taylor Elgersma. We're not in that territory, obviously. I'm not saying you're suggesting that, but even if he can latch on to a practice squad spot, it'd be historic in terms of what that means for Canadian football and what that could possibly do in the future. Giving opportunities to players coming up from the U Sports level, which, it's very few and far between when it comes to that. Like, I'm trying to even wrap my head around a couple of guys. There's someone in Chicago. There's a lineman in Chicago who's in a camp right now. He played at UBC, I believe, and he's gunning for a roster spot. I've heard good things. Speaking of Chicago, Caleb Williams looked pretty good yesterday.
Yes.
His preseason debut finally got in action in week number 2. And it's funny because all of a sudden, people are starting to say, Caleb Williams, looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a year ago, everyone's sitting there calling him a massive bust.
I know.
One preseason game is going to change everyone's mind, apparently.
No, it won't. No, it's just the overreaction that happens because people are starved for football analysis this time of year. And you can see that the real stuff that you can actually analyze is only a couple weeks away now, and people are people are kind of they're really hurting for it, Al's brother. And I know you're number one on the list of people that just cannot wait for regular season games to begin.
I cannot wait for the National Football League to kick off in a couple of weeks. I'm gearing up for it.
I'm surprised you're even able to make the show because all these fantasy drafts you've got to study for. Like, where do you fit in the time? I heard you talking about how you're involved in what, no less than 4 fantasy leagues.
Yeah, I got 4 on the go right now, but I feel like that's the most that I'm capable of doing. A couple of years ago, last minute I got asked to join another one, like a buddy from university. They needed an extra guy. And I was like, all right, sure, I'll get in there. And I felt like it was just too much. It was just one too many leagues. So for me, I think the perfect number is 4.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm a big fantasy guy. I love fantasy football. I find that it consumes a lot of my life. That's for sure. But yeah, I'm getting set. I'm drafting. I'm pre-scouting. I'm getting ready.
Well, Hazy B was on here. He was very happy to hear that you were diving deep into the tremendous fantasy information.
Yeah. That's exactly
for another season of great handicapping.
Exactly what I've been up to.
And of course, Luke Wilson. Did you hear Luke Wilson bleep talking you on the show last week?
I didn't. What was he saying?
Oh yeah, he says he's got startling recordings of you saying unflattering things about a certain captain of this show.
Oh, really?
Yes.
All right. Well, I can't wait till that comes to light.
Is this going to be blackmail?
That sounds like fake
situation?
news. Sounds like fake news to me. I'd love to see these.
Maybe it's
these come out.
AI generated.
It very well could be. Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Joining us now is Farhan Lalji, or TSN CFL and NFL reporter. How's it going, Farhan?
Good, Mike. Dave, thanks for having me, guys. Getting closer and closer to that time, aren't we? It should be fun.
Well, we are, and we're actually talking about Taylor Elgersma, who had an opportunity to star for the Packers this weekend. Ended up playing just over a full quarter. Ended up throwing for over 100 yards and leading the Packers to 3 scoring drives. Like, how great of a story is this to have a U Sports, a Canadian-born, bred, developed quarterback kind of make some noise down south?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. It's something that, all of U Sports and the Canadian development system can really take a bow for, right? And look, at the end of the day, you can't make the exception the norm, right? Like, this isn't a case of every U Sports kid can play in the NFL, but it does speak to the fact that there should be no limits. And if you are good enough and you meet the physical profile and you have all the measurables, no one should be able to say you can't. Whether it's in the CFL or the NFL, you should at least be able to get the opportunity. And it's interesting because I've always felt that I don't know how seriously the CFL took Taylor Elgersma until the NFL took him seriously, but what he's doing right now down there is fantastic. I was texting a bit with Larry Skenes, who spent some time coaching when he was younger, and Larry did the Football North program and is now primarily in Texas, and just a number of people that have kind of had their hands around this guy and mentored him. And I think all of them should feel pretty good right now about how he's playing, because as we went from the big All-Star game that he played in and the Senior Bowl, and then eventually his first preseason game, and now this, every step has been bigger, and in every step he's looked more comfortable.
Farhan, I mean, you look at his chances of remaining on that roster or maybe the practice squad. I mean, we all understand there's very little patience in the NFL for anybody that isn't right aboard at the right spot of the learning curve. I mean, in your experience, kind of what are the odds here? I mean, he's had one really good preseason performance. He's got another chance in one more preseason game at Lambeau to make another strong impression. But if you had to sort of handicap the chances of him landing on this roster, how do you see it?
Well, look, it's going to come down to the Packers' desire to carry 4 quarterbacks, right? And Sean Clifford's got some pedigree because he comes out of Penn State. He's been there for a year. And really, that's who he's battling for, right? He's battling for the number 3 spot. And even though the NFL allows for a 3rd quarterback to be active, right? Not all of them want to do that, right? Because you've got to make them an inactive, which means you're elevating them above the practice roster, right? So you go from practice roster to inactive, and they can dress a quarterback who's on the inactive list. And most teams just don't carry 4, right? You either have they still, even though they've got that opportunity, most teams will still have 2 on the game day roster and 1 more in their building, right? Generally a practice roster player. The odd team will put 3 on the active roster or take the flexibility the league now affords. So very few have 4. And so can Taylor Elgersma get past just a guy that's got a better resume? Because it's pretty clear that Malik Willis is going to be the number 2 behind Jordan Love. So they're battling for 3. So, see what it looks like. I haven't followed Clifford his preseason as closely. For everything I've heard, they're pretty even across the board in practice. But, the team has a year of investment in Sean Clifford. So, we'll see if they see enough potential. But it's not going to be easy. You can't just look at what happened yesterday and say he's a lock to make the PR, because that might mean carrying forward. I don't know what their desire is to do that.
In conversation with Farhan Lalji, Nathan Rourke, who had a cup of coffee down in the NFL, a couple of practice squads, it really started to heat it up now with the BC Lions. I think his last 6 games, averaging 352 yards per game. How great is it to see him kind of finally hit his stride since returning to the CFL?
Yeah, it's been good. And, we've seen flashes of it all season. I'm not sure that Nathan is still consistently accurate as he was in 2022, but he's still accurate enough to be an exceptional quarterback in this league, right? So I was really impressed with the second half of this game against Montreal, and that defense, even without Marc-Antoine Duquois and a couple of pieces, is still a very good defense. And in the second half, he was 10 of 11, really 10 for 10, because the last one was just kind of a throwaway at the end of the game, for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half. And in the first half, he was really just managing first down, but in the second half, he was pushing the ball down the field consistently and looked really good doing it. So, that part of his game is now there. So it's all there, right? And he's shown it in flashes, and now he's putting more and more of it together. Watching the way that Nathan navigates the pocket right now is also really, really impressive, because there's some quarterbacks that just scramble and look to run around, whereas he's okay just kind of stepping up in the pocket and sliding and knowing exactly how much time he has on every move. Okay, I've stepped up inside of this guy. I know where the blocker is. I know where the next guy's coming from. I've got a half second. Waits for that guy to come, sets up the next block. Like, it's so calm that it makes him pretty difficult to deal with right now.
Hey, Farhan, obviously the Argos have been a lost cause, it seems. They're 2-8 now after losing to the Elks. And now this kind of insult to injury, this story that emerged last week about how next year during the World Cup they're going to have to play so-called home games that won't be home games at all. They'll be in Hamilton and Winnipeg and Regina. What did you make of that? And what do you make of the fact that the Argos have gone from being champions to being, such a mess so quickly?
Well, as far as the decision on games next year, I can't say I'm surprised, right? I just, MLSC has just not wanted to make an effort for this team, and I can't imagine them doing what Amar Doman's going to do, and that's build a temporary facility and play a couple of games there. They're going to want to choose the path of least resistance. That's what we've seen thus far, and it shouldn't surprise you. We've seen Touchdown Pacific take away Argos, or Touchdown Atlantic take away an Argos home game and put it in Halifax, right? So they maybe feel that they're going to lose less money by taking a game on the road, and they'll get more fans in Saskatchewan, and that'll be worth the additional travel costs that they've got to pay. So I don't know what the government appetite is to help. Like here in BC, the provincial government is going to help the Lions relocate, because ultimately it's not the Lions' fault this has happened. And when you take a Lions game and put it into another place, they're going to bring significant economic impact, because if they go to Vancouver Island or the Okanagan, they're going to sell out. I don't know what that looks like for the Argos, but if I'm them, I would take them to a U Sports facility, take them to London and play at Western, take them to Guelph, take them to Queens, wherever, and bring some additional stands in and try to grow the audience in those parts of the province. But that takes effort, and it's pretty clear they don't want to do that. And as far as the team is concerned, it's, a lot of people expected the Argos to take a big step backwards a year ago when they had tons of free agent losses on defense and a Chad Kelly issue at the start of the season. And they didn't, right? They kind of hung on, Chad got back, and they wound up, having a pretty good finish to the year, and they wind up winning a Grey Cup. And so I kind of think they felt it was going to be that easy again, and it's actually gone the way many expected it to go a year ago, where the defensive roster turnover is a disaster. And ironically, like, you can't blame Nick Arbuckle. Like, I'm not necessarily the biggest Nick Arbuckle fan as a player. I love him as a person. So if you would have asked me at the start of the year, this would be their record, I would have said, okay, I'd buy it, but I would have assumed it was going to be an offensive issue. The fact that the offense is actually doing reasonably well, Coxie has been exceptional all season. They've done a lot of good things, and for it to be a defensive and a special teams issue, that part of it surprises me.
Farhan, it was great to chat as usual. We'll do it again soon.
Take care, guys. Talk to you.
Absolutely. Farhan Lalji, TSN CFL insider, NFL reporter. The such a fall from grace. Like, you go from winning a championship to being a 2-8 team. It's tough. It's tough. And to his point, I think a lot of people expected the step back, especially like the defense got gutted, right?
Yeah.
Chad Kelly. But the problem is Chad Kelly was only supposed to be out 6 games. And now all of a sudden you're starting to wonder, will we see Chad Kelly in 2025?
Doesn't feel like it.
Like, even if he gets healthy, do you want to put him out there to risk injury and then next season is up in flames as well? Like, I feel like that's a conversation that they're going to have internally. Do we bother? Do we just shut him down for the year and punt to next season? That's
the thing. When you're 2-8, I mean, it's just hard to imagine there's any coming back from this, right? I mean, even if you run the table, you may not be a factor.
The problem is the CFL. It's like, it's not as difficult to make the playoffs after a 2-8 start, but
you'd have to see signs that you could run the table, and this team has shown none of those signs.
Oh,
right?
I know.
They can't win a game, let alone win all the games.
Brutal.
And they're going to have to win most of them if they're going to have any semblance of a shot. So, it's shocking to me the way it's happened. And then, like, I got a lot of people in my life who love this team, and I can't tell you how dispirited people were by hearing that decision that they're going to take 3 games on the road next year that are supposed to be 1 games.
That's tough. Like, I remember Hamilton had to do that.
Yeah.
Years back when they rebuilt Timmy's Field over top of Old Ivor Wynn.
Right.
I don't remember it going
Master,
very well.
Didn't they?
Yeah. They played at Guelph.
At Guelph. That's right.
They played for the Griffins at Guelph,
Right.
which it was during the time when I was at university. So, like, I had some buddies who were there, and they thought it was cool. They're like, oh, yeah, sharing some digs with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They got to watch practice, go to games and all that. The Guelph Griffins thought it was great. I would imagine that a lot of the Tabbies who were playing at the time didn't enjoy that, and I don't think the Argos are going to enjoy that either. You wonder what that could do for free agency and how difficult it would be to bring in some high-level free agents to try and get this team into a much better situation next year. I'm not sure they're going to have much success with that pitch point that they're going to lose out on a bunch of home games.
You might leave that out of the initial pitch.
Well, yeah, that's going to be
By the way,
that'd be a good follow-up for any agent out there, though, and question for the GMs if any players are talking to them. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, Ross Tucker still to join us at 6:05. Get into what's going on in the NFL, and Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada, to join us at 6:30. You listen to OverDrive on TSN 1050, live on TSN 2, and live on YouTube. Overdrive continues on TSN 1050 and live up on TSN 2. Mike DeStefano, Dave Feschuk here, filling in on a Monday. Just looking at the worst Toronto sports trade bracket, which you can find on TSN 1050 in their Twitter page or X, whatever you want to call it. And looking at Mulligan to the Leafs. And I don't know if you heard, but Dubas was recently on a podcast. I think it was Cam and Strick's podcast.
Yeah.
And came out and said, pointed at that specific trade, the Mulligan for Marchment, as one that he regrets. It's like that's the one that
I know.
you regret. I thought it was kind of comical. That of all moves that he made here in Toronto was the one that he decided to circle.
In a previous interview, he said his biggest regret was screwing up the contracts of the three big young guys after giving Tavares $77 million. So, who knows what his biggest regret is. He's got a number of them, I think, Al's brother.
Yeah, I thought I heard, actually. Looks like Pittsburgh might be looking to sell off. The Penguins looking to sell. I thought I saw Fenway's looking to move that franchise again after they had bought it, like 3 years ago?
It doesn't. Don't quote me on that, but it doesn't feel like that long ago that they bought it and
already
hired
looking
Dubas.
to move it.
Yeah, there's the rumors that Marilyn Bean may be in line to get back in there, and who knows?
That'd be good. All right, second hour over. Third hour of Overdrive continues.
CHUM AM Toronto is TSN 1050, an iHeartRadio station, the voice of Toronto sports. This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Don't be shy, shy, shy. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Da 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 da. Da da da. La 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 la. La 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 la. Da 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 da.
6 p.m. hour of OverDrive underway. Mike DiStefano and Dave Feschuk filling in for the regulars today. We're going to have Ross Tucker join us in just a moment. But as we do on every Monday, something to chew on, brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. Enjoy $15 lunch at BP where you get an entree, a side, and a drink. You'll get it all in 20 minutes or less. A fast lunch doesn't have to be fast food. See you for a $15 fast lunch at your local Boston Pizza. So something to chew on. We've been talking about this throughout the day, but obviously the big news of the day here in Toronto is that Bobby Webster was named not the president, but the head of basketball operations. And something to chew on. We're wondering, what are you expecting from the Raptors this year? Like, do you expect them to be, and there's a poll, you can go find it on the OverDrive Twitter page. You can go find it, and the poll basically, playoffs, play in, or miss the playoffs. What are the expectations for the Raptors now that you're in the Bobby Webster era?
Well, they got a playoff payroll, as we discussed earlier in the show. They're spending a lot of money on these players.
Yeah.
It seems like they maybe have a play-in profile in terms of coming away from a 32-win season, 50-loss season, where they were clearly tanking and not particularly effectively tanking.
Yeah.
Didn't even play Brandon Ingram after they acquired him late in the season. Probably could have played, but didn't feel necessary given their competitive aspirations or lack thereof. But we don't really know. That's the bottom line, Alice, brother. We haven't seen these guys play together enough to really know. We haven't seen Brandon Ingram play at all, and he's a $40 million piece of this puzzle. So I think if they were injury-free, which is in the NBA almost a pipe dream, I could see them being a top 6 team in this league. But, given the fact that they probably won't be injury-free, play-in seems logical to me.
Well, that's what's leading the poll right now. There's about an hour left in this poll, and the play-in tournament at 47.2%, 38% believe they missed the playoffs. So only 14% of the pollsters believe that the Raptors can finish a top 6 position and secure a playoff spot. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of optimism right now for Toronto, and I guess why would you? Like, Masai was looked at as a messiah for many years, and then you part ways with him and you promote the guy who was underneath him for all these years. It's, well, how are we going to get something different? I don't quite understand it. And I get that sentiment. And what we've seen over the last few years, well, has not been a top 6 in the East playoff finish. So makes sense.
I don't know if you could technically call this a promotion for Bobby Webster. I mean, he was the incumbent top basketball executive still employed by Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment before the search.
He was
for the
already
so-called
making
president.
Those moves prior to finding a president anyway.
He was the head of the org chart.
Yeah.
And now instead of calling him president of basketball operations, they are calling him head.
The head.
Not the vice president, not the executive vice president, but the head. President and head aren't really like neck and neck as the two things I want to be called. I mean, I'd much rather be called president than head.
Correct. And he'll have an opportunity, I'm sure, if things go well and he proves that he could put together a winner here in Toronto. I'm sure a title change could be in the works in the next couple of years. But I mean, he's got to put a winning product on the court.
Yeah, if he puts a winning product on the court, they'll cease calling him a body part and maybe give him a better title. Like I guess head is better than like foot or
the foot,
touche or
Yeah, it's not
elbow.
Of all the
elbow of basketball operations.
Of all the body parts it could be, I suppose that one is among the ones you would prefer. Really quickly before we get to Ross Jackson's here, or Ross Tucker rather, former NFL analyst, I do want to play a quick clip from Sean McDermott after his team got spanked last night, 38-0 by the Chicago Bears, and he wasn't too fond of his team's performance.
Up to our standard, what we expect. Got a lot of work to do. That's very clear. It doesn't matter who's out there, ones, twos, threes, fours, whoever it is, we expect them to perform, and we expect our level of performance to be much better than that.
So not too happy about the way that the depth played. Now, I will say Chicago played their starters. The Bears, they walloped them. 38-0 was the final. But the Bills, it was second, third stringers. And to McDermott's point, you do expect, for your organizational depth to step up and not get tattooed by, another organization. But I don't know. It's definitely not a sky is falling scenario to lose 38-0 in a preseason game.
No, it means exactly nothing other than the coach pointing out that, guess what? These guys that are on the fringes of our roster, they should be working harder trying to get off the fringes and into the roster, right? And that's basically what this was, right? This was guys who probably won't be on the team not performing like they should be on the team.
Correct. All right, joining us now on the line is Ross Tucker, former NFL analyst and host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast at Ross Tucker NFL on socials. How's it going, Ross?
It's going fantastic. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're doing great. And we're just talking about Sean McDermott's comments yesterday after they got beat 38-0 by the Chicago Bears. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to them, but he essentially said that they didn't play up to their standard. He was, upset regardless if it was second, third, fourth stringers that were in the game. What did you make of those comments?
Yeah, that some of that's coaching, right? That's how these guys look at it, in the sense that, yeah, they realized that the Bears, had different priorities for that game than they did, and that the Bears certainly had their starters out there. And let's be honest, right? It was a nationally televised game, and Bears have a new coach. They got a young quarterback. The Bears put a priority on that game last night of really looking good, really trying to build some buzz for the team, some confidence for Caleb Williams. That's what they prioritized. The Buffalo Bills did not prioritize that. They did not care about that, and that's totally their prerogative. But, you'd still want the guys that are out there to perform better, because a lot of those guys are going to contribute this year, right? Like, it'd be one thing if it was the last 20 guys on the roster, but the guys that are out there, some of those guys are going to get playing time this year. A lot of those guys will be practice squad. They might get called up. So it's still disappointing when, you get beat that badly or you look that badly and that guys don't perform at a higher level. You're hoping that your position coaches, that your coordinators, that they can get those guys to perform better than they did last night.
So Caleb Williams, he's a very polarizing player in the NFL right now. Last year's number 1 overall pick, did not have a particularly good rookie season. Got his first start in the preseason last night. Did go 6 of 10 for 107 yards with a touchdown in that game against the Buffalo Bills. His first showing with Ben Johnson, his new head coach. What's your confidence level that Caleb Williams can still be a franchise quarterback in the NFL?
That's a really good question. I would say not particularly high. If a scale 1 to 10, and 1, I don't think he has any chance to be a long-term franchise quarterback, and 10 means I really think he's going to be, I think he's a lot to be a franchise quarterback, I'd probably put him at 4 or 5. I just think that there are some concerns there that I've seen, especially in terms of, you think about some of the decisions he made last year. It just seems like a lot of times he does the wrong thing. And he takes so many sacks, and that goes back to college, and that's a really, really hard thing for guys to be able to overcome. So I would say if 5's right in the middle, put me at 4, right? If he doesn't do it this year or doesn't look like he's on his way this year with Ben Johnson, I would think that that's really concerning because the amount of resources they put in. They're drafting skill guys, right, with the first 2 picks. They sign a whole new interior 3 on the offensive line. They bring in Ben Johnson as the head coach. I mean, everything they're doing is to try to make the Caleb Williams thing work.
No doubt about it, Ross. So we're big fans of the Ross Tucker podcast over here, and I saw on social media, I haven't had a chance to listen, that you've taken the opportunity to break down the entire AFC and give your predictions. Obviously, in this neck of the woods, there's a lot of attention on the Buffalo Bills and their prospects to take the step that they have yet to take in franchise history, Ross. Not to ruin the suspense, and I promise I'll listen, but where do you have the Bills factoring in this season, and what do you foresee out of Orchard Park, New York?
Well, I don't know if we talked about this before, but that was, my favorite of the 5 teams I played for. I have a real affinity for the people up there in Western New York and in Canada. Went up to Toronto probably 3 times and was amazed with just how clean it was and how awesome Toronto was. Big fan of Toronto as well. The best thing that I feel like the Bills have going for them right now is that I think their division is significantly worse than their 2 major competitors in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens and the Kansas City Chiefs, right? I mean, the Chiefs are in a division where 3 teams made the playoffs last year. The Ravens are in a division where only a couple did, but certainly you think the Bengals will be in the mix. I would be very surprised if any other team in the AFC East made the playoffs. So why that matters is the Bills need to get the number 1 seed. They need to get the number 1 seed, and they need to get home field advantage throughout. I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me. I don't think they've done that under Josh Allen. Even 2 years ago when they got to play the Chiefs at home, I believe the Ravens were the number 1 seed. Correct me if I'm wrong. So they haven't done that yet, and I just think there's a significant advantage to only having to play 2 games, and they're both at home. And there's really no excuse for the Bills to not get that home field advantage this year. I think that's critically important. They need to get it. Every year it seems like they lose at least 1 game, sometimes 2, that they just have no business losing. That can't happen this year.
With Ross Tucker, the Buffalo Bills, they got their hold-in situation dealt with. James Cook signed his deal last year, but there's still a few more around the NFL, and one that is above the rest is the Micah Parsons situation. Now, you had an opportunity to play in Dallas in your career. Are you surprised that it's kind of gotten to this point, given your experience with Jerry Jones?
Nope, not anymore. I mean, this is kind of standard operating procedure, it feels like, at this point for Jerry Jones. I mean, I don't know when he decided this, guys, but it certainly feels like he decided at some point that trying to win a Super Bowl is really expensive, really hard to do, and that your odds of doing so are very small and very hard to control. But then he realized, being able to be the team that makes the most money and is worth the most, that's a lot easier to control. And so I believe he feels like he's winning in the business of football. And I think he realized at some point along the way that nothing gets attention like a star player holdout during training camp, and the suspense and intrigue around whether or not he'll play in that first game. And so I think that's one of the reasons why he does this. I really do. I think he's figured out that he's getting millions and millions of dollars worth of free value every day with the Micah Parsons, will he, won't he situation. I think if you're a Cowboys fan, that should be really troubling, really sad, because there's no way to argue that it's what's best for the football team, especially when Micah ends up getting a deal that's going to be a ton of money and at the very top of the market, a ton of cap space. But it just doesn't feel like the Cowboys care about that much. It feels like they they think that it's worth it.
Hey, Ross, what does it do in your experience? What does it do to the unit, the team, when you've got a circus sideshow of this nature going on around it, orchestrated by the owner of the whole operation?
Well, it depends on who you are, right? If you're a guy like I was, it doesn't really affect you that much at all because you're just so concerned about your job and your role, and the things with star players or whatever don't really affect you or concern you that much. I think the higher you are on the totem pole, the more frustrating it is. You know, I think about a guy like Joe Burrow, who after the season was asked, I think about Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and salary cap and how hard it is. And he said, well, I don't know. I mean, the Eagles have paid everybody. Seems like that's the way to go. Seems like that's the way to do it. And I love that Burrow said that and called the Bengals out. I think if you're Dak Prescott or some of these guys, you get frustrated because you're probably smart enough to realize that the organization really isn't doing everything it can or should do to try to put you in the best chance to succeed. And this is your legacy. I mean, this is your life. CeeDee Lamb knows it. Certainly Dak Prescott knows it. But at this point, what are they going to do?
With Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Matthew Stafford finally got onto the field for practice today. I think Rams fans got a sigh of relief when they saw him finally hit the field. But a lingering back injury at 37 years old. How concerning is this whole situation for the Rams right now when it comes to Matt Stafford?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty concerning. You know, you're talking to a guy. My last year in Buffalo, 2004, I had major back issues, and I got the epidural, and it didn't really do much for me. And I played the last however many games with a herniated disc in my back, and it was bad. I mean, it was really, really bad. I had a significant playing time bonus, so I was heavily motivated to play on multiple levels. But I mean, I can remember taking I think it was 2 Flexerals, 2 Loratabs. I would get a shot of Toradol on my butt before every game. My wife, I remember that last game against the Steelers, my wife had to tie my shoes when I was leaving the house to go to the stadium. I mean, it was bad. I do think as a quarterback, he's in a better spot because he doesn't have to be in a 3-point stance. So he doesn't have to have that sort of fulcrum of being in that 3-point stance and having to, get out of it up into an upright stance. So that should help. I know he's tough as nails, but he's also, I think I was 25. I mean, he's also 37. And if he's already getting the epidural, he's having a disc issue. He's got a long road ahead of him. I think anybody that's ever been there, and I'm sure a lot of people listening in their cars right now, if you've been there with back pain and you've had the epidural, that's a long road to hoe. I'm 46 now, guys. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that said they used to have a bad back. It's like once you have a bad back, you're signed up for that for life, and then you're just kind of managing it for the rest of your life. So yeah. I would definitely be concerned if I were a Rams fan.
Hey, one of the other big hold-in stories, and there have been a handful of them, Ross, as you know, in the NFL. Terry McLaurin down in Washington. What do you think of this strategy that he's employing now? Not only is he, he hasn't caved in on the contract talks, but he is, joining the team in practice, taking himself off the PUP list, as they call it, and making himself available to get out there. Doesn't feel like much of a hold-in anymore, but the contract impasse remains. If you're a player or you're his agent, how do you feel about this move?
Well, I guess I have some skepticism that it's not contract related at all. I know that's what they're saying, but I would imagine that there's been some type of progress, some type of, conversation. If you remember, James Cook practiced for a day or two before he got the new deal. I think these teams don't want to set the precedent of giving a guy a deal to get him to come back to practice. they want to set the other precedent of after you come back to practice, then you have a better chance of getting the new deal.
Right.
So my guess is that is what's going on there, and that I would think he'd have a new deal within the next week or so.
Ross, I want to ask you about Joe Flacco, who was named the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns this year, 40 years old. What are your expectations for Flacco at this point, and can they even be a competitive team in the AFC North here?
Well, so I just did their game against the Eagles on Saturday. I do the Eagles preseason games, and I went to their joint practices, and I don't know. I mean, I think even the Browns know that best case scenario, if everything went well, they're like, 7-10? You know? I think the real issue is with all those veterans on the team. You think about Joel Bitonio and Myles Garrett. Tough to just put a Dylan Gabriel out there or Shedeur Sanders, right? You want to give those guys a chance when the season's a clean slate to win games and see if maybe they can go on a run and surprise people. Plus, their schedule is really difficult at the start. My guess is that they want to, play Joe at the start, and then when it's pretty clear that they're out of the playoff mix, then probably get these other guys in. I guess I understand that. I'm not sure that's the way I would go, but I do understand the logic there. And I'll say this too: I'm impressed by Flacco. I mean, he's made $180 million. Okay, that's just in on-field earnings. He's making $4 million this year from the Browns. So I guess I always look at it like after taxes, that's $2 million, and that's a lot of money, right, for me and you and whoever. But for him, that $2 million is not going to make a difference in his life.
Yeah.
A significant injury could, a torn patella tendon, a really bad concussion. So I'm impressed, surprised, whatever, that Joe keeps going, that he keeps wanting to play. He clearly loves football.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule. You mentioned it. Bengals, Ravens, Packers, Lions, Vikings, Steelers to start the season. So maybe by the time they get to the Dolphins in Week 7, we'll see them make that quarterback swap. Unless, they go on a run and win some of those games and shock the world. Stefanski's a good coach. They had, some success yardage-wise a couple years ago. Maybe there could be some sort of Cinderella story, although usually the Browns brown themselves. So I'm not holding my breath on that. Not betting on Cleveland. That's definitely for sure. Ross, before we get you out of here, what's the deal with this myfrontpagestory.com?
Well, let me ask you guys this. Is September and October, or maybe even August, big for anniversaries up there, or no?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because evidently I found out recently, September and October are the two biggest months for weddings in the United States, which blows my mind away that people do that during football season. That should be illegal.
Agreed.
It's selfish. I mean, the amount of weddings I've missed because I'm a player or a broadcaster, extremely frustrating. But the only reason I reference that is because these guys at myfrontpagestory.com, it is by far the best anniversary gift I've ever seen. So if you're one of those people that got married in September, October, or late August, or maybe your parents did, check out myfrontpagestory.com. You literally talk to a professional writer for 10 minutes, tell them how great your significant other is, or maybe your parents, whoever you get it for. They write this incredible story. It's framed, looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper, and I've seen so many videos at this point now where they're just crying when they receive it because it's a really emotional gift. See in print and words how much you mean to the other people in your life. So anybody got an anniversary coming up, do yourself a favor. At least go check out myfrontpagestory.com and see what it looks like. Throw your email address in, and you'll get that 20% discount code if you want to wait till Valentine's or Mother's Day or something. It's called myfrontpagestory.com.
Love it. Absolutely. I know I've got, I think my parents' anniversary is coming up pretty soon, so I'll definitely have to take a look at that. Ross, really appreciate the time as always. Hopefully we can do it again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. There he goes. Ross Tucker from the Ross Tucker Football Podcast at Ross Tucker NFL on socials and, myfrontpagestory.com. What he said there at the end, by the way, about weddings, like wedding season being in the fall is horrendous.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. And especially for those who have like Sunday weddings, which is a bizarre thing to do anyways. But
I didn't even think that was a thing. I guess it is.
I've known lots of people. Maybe it was just because like COVID, they had to move a lot of dates through COVID and maybe they're still trying to catch up with some of these spots. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people complain that they've got like a week 3 Sunday NFL wedding to attend.
Yes.
Instead of being able to sit down and watch the game and be a degenerate for the next 8 hours or 12 hours of commercial-free football, which is no longer commercial-free, actually. I just realized, I remembered that the other day. Very upsetting stuff.
Yeah.
New era, new times that we're in here.
It is a new time. And I like, yeah, look, I mean, I guess people get married on pretty much every day of the week, but you'd like to think they'd leave Sunday as a sacred day
Sundays
for the
are
football fans in the fall.
It's for church and it's for football.
Yeah.
That's what Sunday's for. It's not to get married.
I mean,
church and football.
Yeah, I guess I got married in the fall, so blame me.
I blame you. It is you. It's
Actually,
your fault.
I appreciate Ross, reminding me that I'm going to need an anniversary gift and not too.
You're gonna have to head to myfrontpagestory.com.
Hey man, he made a hell of a sales pitch.
Yeah.
What's a newspaper, by the way, Alice brother?
What's a newspaper? I'm not sure.
I don't even know what are those things.
No clue. Clue.
Front page of the what?
How many front page stories have you had in your career?
Oh, very few. Very few.
Really?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Why would it even count?
Because it's been so many.
That's probably it. Back when my mom was still alive, she used to cut them all out and put them in a scrapbook. But those days are gone.
Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada, joining us next here on Overdrive on TSN 1050, live on TSN 2 and up on YouTube. continues on TSN 1050, up on TSN2 and on YouTube Live. Mike DeStefano and Dave Feschuk here with you. And join us in a moment. We'll be joined by Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada. And we got the Canadian Open coming to town this week. We've got at the Mississauga Golf Club. So that should be awesome. We'll definitely ask Lawrence about that. Want to ask him about that Scheffler shot over the weekend. I mean, one of the best shots that I've honestly seen in my life. Now, I'm not like Mr. Golf guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not Hazy, B&O, and you and your son, like diehard golf guy. But that shot was incredible.
It was great to watch.
Oh,
great TV.
He's so good, man. Like, look at this.
Look at this.
81-foot chip, and it just, like, how that rolled like 40 feet.
Oh, yeah.
And just perfectly dropped in ever so softly. Like, the man's got butter hands. It's unbelievable. All right, joining us now on the line, Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada. How's it going, Lawrence? Good to chat with you.
Great to hear from you, Al's brother. And Dave, wonderful to see you as well and hear you.
Absolutely. Always love having you on the show. And we're just talking about the Scheffler shot. We got to watch it on TSN2 again. It's a shot that I honestly won't mind to watch multiple times throughout my life. I mean, where does that one kind of sit for you when you think back of some of Scheffler's greatest shots?
Well, I think on an earlier edition of SportsCenter this morning, I think they showed some of the highlights of just this year alone. And obviously, Scottie Scheffler is having, a season for the ages, reminiscent of, 2 or 3 of the Tiger Woods years. So he's playing, amazing golf. But here, north of the border, we're just super excited that both, Corey Connors and Nick Taylor are playing into the Tour Championships, and they themselves are both having exceptional years. But you do have to sort of appreciate that you're watching a season of greatness with Scheffler. Absolutely.
Well, it's one of the great questions for any sport, Lawrence, is like, would you rather have a dominant force, an all-time great sort of that is so much better than everybody that it's just awe-inspiring, or would you rather have more parity at the top? I mean, how do you see it with golf?
Well, I think history sort of tells us that the most compelling eras are those where there is an A and a B. There's a rivalry that people are striving for. And I think what was really neat in the Tiger years was you had different guys coming up and being able to battle Tiger for a very short period of time, and then he would dispatch them, and you'd have another, and he'd do the same thing. And obviously, if you go back to that 4-year stretch, I mean, it was nothing short of incredible. I've been very fortunate to see Scottie up close, and we've had Rory start to battle him in some areas, and then you had Xander Schauffele playing pretty well, and a whole host of other people. But I'd really look forward to celebrating his year in 2025, and then 2026. Obviously I'm very biased, but to see one of our Canadians start to really drive towards the top. But it has been some really superb golf, and I think for so many of the recreational golfers or really excellent golfers out there, to take away the mental stability, strength, the performance ability that Scottie Scheffler has done from just the mental side of the game is something that us inside the game are really following, and how really, truly generationally he's been in that area of the sport.
Well, Lawrence, you mentioned it. A couple Canucks, Corey Connors and Nick Taylor, both advancing to the Tour Championship. And I think it was really just the second time since 2007 that we'll have 2 Canadians at the tournament. Like, what does that say about the growth and kind of where golf is at here in Canada?
Well, it's been a superb time to follow Canadian golf and to be part of it and to be a fan of it. It was Taylor Pendrith was just on the outside of that top 30 and would have been a historic threesome that we're going into the Tour Championship. But, Mackenzie Hughes had a good year. Taylor Pendrith had a very solid year. And then our 2 stalwarts, the guys who represented Canada at the Paris Olympics in Corey Connors and Nick Taylor have just been so exceptional. and it gives us this energy about what's going on in golf. And for us, really this week, and what's happening at the Mississauga Golf and Country Club is we're going to welcome, 93 of the top 100 professional female golfers in the world. And we're going to have 14, we'll find out in the next hour, but maybe even 15 Canadians tipping it up for the CPKC Women's Open. So all in all, on the men's side and on the women's side, it's just a really special moment to be following Canadian golf.
So another big moment for you, Lawrence, I'm sure, on the business side of things, was the announcement that RBC had extended its partnership to be the title sponsor of the men's Canadian Open, the RBC Canadian Open, on a multi-year deal. RBC's been a big part of what is helped propel Canadian golf to where it is. What's this mean from your perspective?
Yeah, Dave. I mean, I think you say RBC being a big part of it is they are interwoven in the fabric of everything that is golf in this country, and this announcement today of them renewing their sponsorship, not only with our event, the RBC Canadian Open, but the signature event, the RBC Heritage, was so wonderful and so appreciated. They've really put golf on their proverbial shoulders, and they support the game at every stage. From the grassroots in our first tee program through RBC Community Junior Golf. They support our women's initiative through She Plays Golf, and then Team Canada. You'll see all of the athletes wearing the RBC shield at both the CPKC Women's Open and, of course, Team RBC at the RBC Canadian Open. But they've just been integral to everything we do in the game. We've been able to bring the event to such heights. I know so many of your listeners and you guys yourselves were out at the RBC Canadian Open this year at TPC Toronto at Osprey Valley, and we just are looking to be world-class in everything we do, and to have a world-class title sponsor like RBC in supporting golf. It's allowed us to really make the tournament so special and really, make a really special experience for all the fans who come out.
With Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada, big tournament this week with the Canadian Women's Open, the CPKC Women's Open this week at the Mississauga Golf Club. What excites you most about this upcoming tournament?
Well, I think for us, the CPKC Women's Open, our title sponsor is the Railways, Canadian Pacific, Kansas City. They go across the country and through the U.S. and Mexico, and so like the railway, the tournament goes across the country. We were in the GTA back in 2019 at the Magna Golf Club. And then we've been, to Shaughnessy in Vancouver, to Ottawa, to Earl Grey in Calgary. But to come back to Toronto and to bring what is I like to share is the Brooke Henderson show into the GTA. This golf course, if you're driving up and down the QEW, you get a chance to see the hitting nets, high above the screen. And this gorgeous Stanley Thompson, Donald Ross golf course amongst the trees, amongst the Credit River, is a beautiful spectacle in our city. And we have the best of the best coming to town. We've got, world number one, Gino Thirico. We've got Nelly Corda. We've got Lydia Ko. And, of course, to see Brooke in amongst the Brooke Brigade, to see all the little girls and little boys following around is really a spectacle. These women are incredible athletes. They hit the ball so pure. And, the end of the season, as you guys know, we've had a great summer. A little bit of rain this last week has sort of made everything pop. It's like a real field of dreams out here at Mississauga. And we're very grateful, to the club, to the membership for hosting us here. And it's really something I encourage, if you haven't seen live professional golf, to come out and see it. And it's really just a wonderful experience for the family.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Lawrence. I mean, and if you haven't seen, the Brooke Brigade, that in itself is worth the price of admission, just to see the frenzy that Brooke causes among the young fans that tend to follow her around. Lawrence, I know Brooke at her height has been among the world's best at times. This hasn't been her best year by the statistical measures. I think she's ranked world number 58 right now. She's been much higher at her best. I mean, what have you sort of seen from her? And I guess what are the odds that a trip to her home country will rejuvenate the season and find a new gear?
Yeah, for Brooke, I just ran into her. She did the red eye from the Portland event last weekend, and she really did at points in the tournament in Portland had it really going. She had the full Brooke arsenal in play, and she finished sort of top 20. But I do think she's one of those athletes that truly feeds off the energy that's been around her. And as you said, Dave, like when you see her out there and the crowds are 4 or 5 deep, she builds on it. She has this incredible momentum. She might be one of the most positive people on the golf course that, professionally that I get a chance to see, where she really engages and connects. And I think that's why she's such a fan favorite. But I would say, there was a streak in the last few CPKC Women's Open where she either won it or was in the last pairing, or was able to be a top 10. And I would say that this golf court suits her. It's playing a little bit longer, and Brooke's been really strong off the tee. One of the areas that she's actually gained statistically is on the putting side. And so this place has small greens. It's playing a little bit longer. So I think that Mississauga is a really good track for Brooke to do well. And I just think that this crowd, this Canadian frenzy that she creates is really going to do really wonderful things. So we're looking forward to seeing Brooke in her full, the full arsenal, as I was saying.
I know we're all going to be looking forward to it and watching it this week. Good luck with everything. I know you're going to put on a fantastic tournament down there. Thank you for doing this as always, Lawrence.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Lawrence Applebaum, CEO of Golf Canada. That'd be quite the story if Brooke Henderson can find her game back on home soil.
Yeah, well, she's won it before.
Yeah.
Why not win it again?
Yep.
And look, I mean, she's set such a lofty standard, right? You kind of just expect, like, she should be winning on a regular basis, right? Because she's won so much. And so when she's not winning, she hasn't won in a while. I mean, it does kind of surprise you. But as Lawrence says, like, a player of that caliber, it's never very far away. She almost
find it.
Yeah, she was right up there at the beginning of the Portland tournament where she had won before, and it wouldn't take much. No one would be surprised if she flipped the switch at Mississauga and found herself right at the top of the leaderboard.
No, and I'm sure we'll have some best bets for the Open later on in the week. But I've got some best bets for tonight's baseball slate. That's coming up next here on OverDrive. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in second on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm looking at the Brewers-Cubs game tonight. I think we see the Brewers get back on their winning ways. They had their winning streak snapped last night, but I think they pick up the win tonight. I like Andrew Vaughn, 2+ bases. That kid's been on fire. Been one of the best hitters of baseball since he's come up to the Brewers. And little CanCon, Owen Casey, I think he records a hit tonight for the Cubbies as well. So you parlay those three together, you can get that at plus 387. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. The first inning means as much as the ninth when you bet baseball on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly, 19+ and physically located in Ontario.
Man, what a season for the Brewers. 14 in a row there they had going.
They have free burgers. See that story last week?
Yeah.
So there's like there's a burger joint. I forget what the store is or what the restaurant is, but there's a burger joint in Milwaukee that if the team wins 13 games in a row, they're going to hand out free burgers to the city. Anyone who goes gets one free burger. And they accomplished that last week when they won their 13th game. They won a 14th game, and then I believe it got snapped after that. So
it was George Webb's Burgers,
George
according to JP.
Webb's Burgers.
And they ran out of vouchers, apparently.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you get your hand away free burgers to the entire city. I mean, I know Milwaukee, it's not the largest city in North America, but I'm sure there's enough people that'll drive over city lines to pick up a free meal. That's one thing I've learned in this life. Free food, swarm.
Yeah.
Swarms of people.
Like that.
For free food.
It's like that July 11th thing at 7-Eleven where it's 7-Eleven free Slurpee 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
You go into a 7-Eleven, it's just like the Slurpee machine's broken because it's been overrun.
People are showing up with buckets.
Yeah.
Trying to get buckets. They had that one promotion. I don't know if you remember that, where it was, I don't know, one day of the year you could show up and fill anything. And people would show up with like garbage cans and fill a massive garbage can with Slurpee.
That can't go well.
Yeah. I think after a couple of years, they outlawed it to like must be this big, an ounce or a milliliter limits.
Okay.
But early on, people were showing up with these big, extravagant containers of some kind to carry like a year's worth of
kids swimming pools.
Yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
Of Slurpee. So they outlawed that one.
Yeah, that's a good move. Good move by 7-Eleven. But I'll tell you what,
Go ahead.
Milwaukee gets a bad rap. A nice town in the summertime. If
Never
you've ever
been. Never been.
Worth going in the summer. Wintertime, it's just another prairie city or
Yeah.
Midwest city that is very cold and not too far from Green Bay and the frozen tundra. Of
Right.
Course. But in the summertime, pretty nice town.
Yeah. I think they're getting enough respect. Like I think I was looking at FanDuel, and they're like fourth best odds to win the World Series.
Yeah.
They got the number one record in baseball by like 6 games.
Kind of Blue Jay-esque, isn't it?
Crushing everybody.
I'm saying it's Blue in terms of the odds. Like the Blue Jays don't have great odds to win, and they're the American League's best team.
Yeah. I think they're like the 4th highest to win the American League, let alone the World Series. The Blue Jays.
Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
There you go. That's right, JP. And I understand it to a degree because both these teams, nobody picked them to begin the year.
Right.
Nobody expected anything of this nature from either of these teams. Maybe they did in Milwaukee. They certainly didn't in Toronto, right? Nobody saw this coming from the Blue Jays.
No, nobody saw it coming. But it's been a fun year. It's been a very fun year. I've enjoyed watching the Blue Jays hard at work. They got a tough pitching matchup tonight. That game just got underway not long ago, but it's Kevin Gausman versus Paul Skenes. First time that Paul Skenes has taken on this Blue Jays lineup. And it's a tough test. It's a good lineup, but he's a hell of a pitcher. So should be really fascinating, entertaining game. We'll come back tomorrow and recap it and see what else we can get up to in the sports world. It was a pleasure to have you here. Are you back tomorrow? I think
Same here.
Frankie.
I don't think I'm back.
No, I think I got Frankie tomorrow. So it's Frankie and I tomorrow, but it's always fun to sit here and chat with you.
Great seeing you.
Good to see you as well. All right, that does it for us. I'll be back tomorrow at 4 p.m., and I'll chat then.